This Saturday, the 30th of June 2012, 4 subjects will engage our attention. Number 1, we're told government is negotiating a $1.5 billion claim by Africa Automobile Limited for some 86 Galloper vehicles supplied in 2001 at a cost of $17 million at the time. Government spokespersons say this is evidence that the Kufuor administration was reckless with contracts and caused the Ghanaian taxpayer huge debts. Former Chief of Staff Kojo Mpiani says government shouldn't pay because the deal was rejected at the time. We'll get the latest on the tango of the Gallopers this morning on Newsfile. Number 2, the NDC has announced this week that President Mills and Vice President John Mahama will not be participating in this year's IEA debates and encounters. Some have been disappointed, and others have suggested it's okay, because after all, the votes don't rest with audiences of the thought leadership debates only. What do you make of the NDC's withdrawal? And while at that, Dr. Abu Sakara of the CPP, who took the seat first, impressed many. What do you make of his performance as well? Let's hear you. And also this week, government created some 46 new district assemblies amidst joy for some and displeasure for others. But there are questions about the legality of the process. Could we be in for a legal surprise, or is it just a bout of ugly noises and much ado about nothing? And if we have some time, we'll talk about the NDC chairman who says he may be heading to the courts for redress after a tape emerged, this week, purporting to be a recording of him suggesting that the rumors about the president's health emanated from within the party. Worrying, or one of those tapes that we should throw through the window. My name is Kojo Oponkroma. My guest this morning, to my extreme left, Sam Okujeto-Ablakwa, Deputy Information Minister. Sam, good morning and thank you for joining us on Newsfile. Next to him, Dominic Nitiwu, NPP Member of Parliament for the Bimbilla constituency. To my right, Susan Edouamankwa, Vice Chairperson of the CPP. Next to her is Abdul Malik Kwekubako, Managing Editor of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome. Let me start off with our very first subject, the IEA encounters and debates. Started off earlier this week. Dr. Abu Sakara of the CPP was there. He gave a good account of himself. He impressed some. There were those who held the view that some of his answers, however, didn't convince them as well. But all in all, the encounters and the debates have started. And while he, put up his performance, on that same night, we received news that the president and the vice president will not be participating in this year's encounter. Let me ask you, Susan, to lead off the discussion on the IEA encounters and the feedback that you are getting from all that has happened around those encounters.
Well, I think the feedback is good. I mean, there has been the praise, there has been the criticism, and all in all, it's good. Definitely people will say good things, and definitely people will also criticize. You cannot please everybody. It's impossible. And so you would have that, and it's important to listen to that to improve. So, I think that Dr. Sakara is a jewel that people are now, discovering. And so in that, there'll be a lot of interest. And with that also, there'll be a lot of criticism, And so I think that, all in all, it's good. We've exposed the good candidates that we have. We've always had good candidates. We're getting even better. And, this is his sort of first appearance to the Ghanaian public as our presidential candidate. And I think that it has created a lot of interest. Generally, we as CPP, we have known this. I mean, I think that when he was the vice presidential candidate, a lot of people saw this. But, when you're a vice presidential candidate, you take a back seat. Mm-hmm. And he's such a team player that he did. And now this is his time for, exposure, and people are now seeing, the real substance of who he is. And I think that, as time goes on, you will see more, you will see even better, and then I'm sure that Ghanaians will be very proud to vote for him.
What do you make of the criticism that a good chunk of his answers were limited to his area of expertise only, the agric scope, but in other areas about economics and maybe other social interventionist policies, he didn't necessarily come out bright and sparkling in those areas?
Well, I mean, that is his soft spot, and that is his speciality, and so people tend to drift to the things that they have a grasp of, you know, things that are their forte. But food security in this country is very important. If people are full bellies, it will allow their creative minds to think, to explore, and we will be better for it. Look, in this country, people are living hand to mouth, even supposedly, you know, higher middle income. I'm supposed to be middle income. Okay, I think that I'm relatively better, but I'm spending 70 to 80% of my salary on food. So I'm virtually living hand to mouth. You understand? And so if my food security is assured, and I know that I can go to the market and spend maybe 30% or 20% of my salary on food and use my money for other things to have a better quality of life and allow me to be more creative, maybe send my children to go and learn how to play the piano or even learn how to swim or to do something else and not spend it on food. You know, my life is better off for it, you know. So, you know, people should not say that because he concentrated on agric, you know, because as much as he did do that, you know, he did show how agric affects everything else. It will help the productive sector. You move into manufacturing, it will create jobs, etc., etc. And what do we want? We want food, we want jobs, because jobs will give us shelter on our heads, jobs will help us pay our bills, etc., etc. So, you know, you move from one to the other. It wasn't just compartmentalized. You know, they were interwoven. It is a multi-sectorial approach that he used, but the focus is on one first. You have people who are not hungry, people who are full, then you move, etc., etc. At this timely moment, we are importing onions from Niger, plantain from Ivory Coast, tomatoes from Burkina Faso. I mean, what are we doing? We can barely feed ourselves. You understand? So when we are able to do that, and we are full, and we sit down and we said, okay, now what else do we want to do? Because like you said, food is the first medicine. Our health is good. You understand? So we say, oh, he did this and he did that. Yes, he did it. That is his soft spot. There's no problem with that. But then it wasn't the only thing. And we know how agric affects other things. And when other things, you know, when that is satisfied, other things will flow.
How do you, you know, take the news? Just a few minutes or just about an hour to the commencement of Dr. Sakare's encounter. How did you receive that news that the president and the vice president were not going to be participating throughout this process?
My honest opinion, I belong to the cockerel, but we are no chickens. But what I said for myself was, chickens! I mean, that was my first reaction. I was like, oh, chickens! You know, they are running scared. That was my first reaction.
Running scared of what? Of who?
That their candidate cannot compete on an even intellectual level. Okay? I mean, I'm sorry, but this is my president I'm talking about. I think he's good, but maybe not as good as his competitors. And that is why his handlers are saying, don't go and do that. You understand?
But in times past, he has been there.
That is why I'm afraid, and I'm thinking that, okay, I mean, he knows he can deal with Mr. Akufo-Addo, but he cannot deal with Abu Sakara. he can deal with Dr. Indu, but he cannot deal with Abu Sakara. And he looks at it and says, wow, I will be shown up. And that was my first thought. And I'm sure many people think that also. Look, the president needs to move out of his comfort zone. Yes, he's had interactions with journalists and etc., etc., but it was still in his comfort zone. In the IEA, it's not his comfort zone, because then it becomes, you know, a sort of out of my home area. Everybody's on that platform, and then maybe he won't come at par, and then it will show him up, and etc., etc. So, you know, I mean, but I think it's a shame. It really is a shame, because people must allow them to have choice. The thing about freedom and liberty is choice. You have the freedom to make choices, to make an informed choice. You understand? I know people have said that, oh, the NDC themselves have said that, oh, we don't need this intellectual thing. But you know what? The intellectual thing is what swings votes. Because it is those group of people who, whether there's a change in government or not, their lifestyles don't change radically. You understand? And we have that chunk of people in this country where, whether it's NDCs, MPP, and CPP comes, their lives are not going to change radically. They are the ones who sit down and listen to the intellectual debate and decide that this is where my vote will go. And so it is important. And so if any party says that, oh, that is not our constituency, and our constituency will get us the votes, I'm sorry, that's not true. Look, we believe as CPP that we're a mass party and veranda boys, etc. But we also believe that it is important to have a thinking group in this country, because the thinking group, they are going to help to shape the future. And so I would have wished that, yes, they come and join. But if they are chicken enough not to come, well, that is their prerogative also.
Dominic, let me come to you and hear your take on the IEA encounters and the debates. Dr. Sakara, and she's suggesting that you also need that thought leadership platform. But some have suggested that, listen, that's not where the votes really lie.
It's true, but Kojo, let me agree your viewers and listeners. They are the people who make this program the best in the country. So it's important to say hi to them. I believe that Dr. Abu Sakara came out to me as an individual who knew what he was doing on that day. He actually impressed me. I watched him throughout, especially on GTV. I watched him throughout, and I felt that he was competent enough. He did very well. So in that score, I'll give it to him. And he also knew what he wanted to talk about, the areas that he actually wanted to talk about: the job creation, the skills building for industrialization, the patriotic services, the fact that he was going to look at the infrastructure, and it was breaking it down into bits and pieces. It's like he had memorized maybe their manifesto and was just releasing it to the public. So for me, in that score, I felt that I'll go with him, and I felt that he did very well. He composed himself well, his dressing, everything. I think that it was good. The standard he set is high, and I hope and I know that others will do that, especially my flag bearer. He's seen it before. He knows what it is. He's debated in Parliament. That's his field. So obviously he'll be the one everybody will measure up to. But it hasn't come to his turn yet. We're talking about Dr. Abu Sakara. I believe that anybody who underestimates the power of the media will do a lot of harm to himself or herself. If you believe that that is not the constituency that you would target, then you may be making a very big mistake. Look, your station, all the media houses that carry that thing, that they goes to the heart of the people. There is nowhere that some of these TV stations that carry it, there's nowhere in this country that you can't find their presence. The affiliate stations to yours, there is nowhere you can't get them. And I can tell you, as the momentum generates and as the momentum builds, it will be the only thing many people will tune to decide their minds. Because look, there is a large chunk of the undecided voters out there, and we are all looking up to them. These are the things that especially the middle class will want to watch. And let me tell you, they are those who are very influential to the people who would say the grassroots. Because look, the number of people you look after are so many. You can as well decide more than 20 votes in terms of who the people will vote for, because you help them. They come to you, you help them. So if you have about some 20,000 middle class and they all decide 10 votes, just 10 votes each, you know the number of people you are deciding? Over 200,000 people. So let anybody think that it was not a platform for somebody to go or to sell himself. He may be making a very big mistake. So that's where I'll leave it with your answer. But the issue of whether the president will go or the president will not go, the president and his team got it wrong when they said that they were following conventions. Akufo-Addo, our presidential candidate, was the candidate of the incumbent government, but he went in 2008. So what sort of convention are we talking about? He felt that, look, it was time for me to defend our position, to defend our record. Our record was good enough for me to go and defend it. If you believe that you do not have a record, then you run away. Okay, like our people will say, you put your tail behind your thighs and run away. And that's what the president has and his people have simply done. If they believe they have a record and they want to go and face the people of this country, let him present himself, let him compete on equal footing with other presidential candidates, put himself out there, and let us see. The difference between President Kufuor and President Mills in this aspect is that President Kufuor had distinguished himself such that by the election year, it was very clear to every Ghanaian that President Kufuor will get a second term again. It was very, very, very clear.
In your opinion? Because I'm sure there were those in the NDC at the time who didn't necessarily think so.
Well, unfortunately,
and for them, the evidence is that President Kufuor didn't show up for that one.
Yes, but that's what they are using. But that's why I said that for most people who were the independents and most people, apart from maybe the NDC, that legitimately thought that they could win, any other person was very sure in his mind that President Kufuor was going to win. President Kufuor never had anybody within his party challenging him. And that's the greatest disservice that anybody can do to another person when within your own party the verdict is that you cannot win the elections, and so they have to change you. At least 3% of the NDC believe, and 3% of 4 million voters is not a small number, believe that President Mills cannot win the elections, and so they have to change him. So when you have all this around you and you believe that, well, it is enough for you not to participate in the IEA platform, then you are making a very big mistake. And I hope, and I know, the standard that has been set by Dr. Abu Sakara, others will even surpass it. And as we move on, the NDC will see they have made a very huge mistake. It may be too late, but they've made a very huge mistake. But me, there are a few points that, though I think he did well, there are a few points that I believe if as we go on, he may change his mind or the party will really look at. One of these is when he said that people who feel BEC will be given a lifeline under the CPP leadership. I thought when Nana Akufo-Addo put it, our presidential candidate, put it out there that, look, instead of truncating or maybe breaking the BEC as a first point of getting the certificate, we should move it on to the senior high, so that we'll have a gradual or not, we'll move on to the extent that when you complete the senior high, that is when you would have the first exam to write, and then you can move on to other fields. Some will go to the universities, some will go to do their nursing, some will go to do their vocational skills, and that's the point. So if you are still talking about BEC, it means you don't believe in that concept. That's where I have a point of disagreement, and that's where many NPP people have a point of disagreement that, to us, when Nana Akufo-Addo wins, you are not going to be talking about BEC, because almost all the students will then move to the SS level, and we're going to make the infrastructure available. We're going to have community secondary schools all over so that people can have that kind of stuff. That's the first point. The second thing is when he talks about the 18 years military, compulsory 6 months military training. I don't know whether he will still stick with the 18 years. The reason is that by the time you are 18, many students, 90% of our students are still in the schools. If you check the age, the way we expect the 15 years at you complete GSS, by 19 years you are completing secondary school at the SS senior high school level. I think that if he's talking about when you complete the the senior high school, then you have that. I will not have a problem.
But to benchmark it at 18 years,
I think that's where my problem is. Apart from that, if you look at somebody who has completed the senior high school, if he's going to have 6 months compulsory secondary, military training, what it will mean is that when he completes in June, I think they complete May, June, it will mean that he might not be able to go to the university that same year. He has to be there doing the military training and then go the following year. And I think that 1 year gap, I will have a misunderstanding. I will have a problem with him, because the current system is that when you complete, you can apply to the university that same year. And so he may have to look at that aspect as well. I agree with him when he says that, look, he will want to involve dual citizenship, those over 3 million Ghanaians who are outside in all aspects of our national life, in taking decisions, even the ROPA. And that's where I think that as a party, we agree with him that, look, we have 3 million Ghanaians out there. They contribute a lot to our national discourse. They contribute a lot to our ability as a nation to even survive. The remittances that they bring is so enormous, billions of US dollars. But when it comes to taking a critical decision like elections about our country, we cut them out. So when he says that he's going to involve that, I think it's a perfect idea. And the last one I will look at that I agree with him is affordable housing for our people. He commended the government for following up on some of the social programs that President Kufuor initiated. But the only one the government has not done, which I think is unfortunate, is the fact that President Kufuor started with affordable housing, and they have not followed it up. And I think that is a very black spot on the NDC as a political party, because as a social democratic party, I was thinking that would be the first one they will also go, but they didn't. So I agree with him on that. So a few areas I do agree, but no, I do disagree. But most areas I think that he did very well.
I'm going to go to Sam shortly, but Susan is eager to quickly rebut on something.
Yes, Honorable Nitu is just repeating our 2012, what do you call it, manifesto, when we said that we will scrap the BCE. But we are not scrapping it immediately we come into power. It will be phased out. You know, we don't want to do, oh, we are stopping these things. It's 3 years. Oh, no, it's 4 years and things like that. It's you know, it throws our whole education into. But what he said is like he repeated exactly. And we always say the MPP copy our manifesto. Because, yes, he repeated exactly what we said in our 2012 manifesto. And anybody can pick it up and say that we said that we will scrap the BCE such that your basic education will end at high school. But we will not come immediately into power and say, because that is what is wrong, we're going to do that. We will phase it out. So the BCE will continue, and while it continues, we start phasing it out. Okay, so what he is saying is just something that we know. We said we will implement, but it is not something that we are come to do, that one thing that they do here in this country. Somebody comes, I don't want 4 years, and it stops it. Another person comes, I want 3 years, and then they stop it. No. Our education system has taken too much battering for that kind of thing. And so it will be phased out so that the basic education ends at, what do you call it, you know, senior high school. But the thing about 18 years, if the basic education is free-flowing, you will end at 18. But you see, when people are in BCE from 16 and they fail and they have nothing to do, they will go to the OICs. When they go to the OICs, they'll probably, some of them will finish at 18. They will move, because it's the OICs that will do this military, you know, will take on this military duty, you know, that they will train them. So obviously they will be in that age range.
35 minutes after 9. Let me just remind our viewers and our listeners that you can join our discussions by text 1422 across networks or 1760 across networks. You can also send us an email, newsfile@myjoyonline.com. If you're on Twitter, I tweet at KO Nkrumah. You can follow me and share your thoughts with us. We'll factor them into our discussion. Sam, what do you make of the feedback and the analysis on the IEA encounters and debates?
Well, let me first of all say good morning to all our listeners and viewers. I must commend Dr. Sakara for a very impressive performance. All the feedback I have monitored has been largely complimentary. People are of the view that he acquitted himself very creditably. It must be noted, though, that Dr. Sakara is not new to this platform. In the last election, he did debate amongst the running mates. And he again, at that time, did very well. All the analysis that followed that first encounter of his were positive assessments of his output. So I don't think that he came to the IEA debate nervy or hesitant. He's quite used to that platform. In terms of the delivery itself, I thought that at some point he looked a bit too laid back. We had been used to the scintillating CPP earlier candidates posturing, and you know we all will concede that in the last debate, Dr. Pakwe Sindum was the most exciting one in terms of his gestures, his excuse me, I'm really struggling with my voice this morning. His gestures, his expressions, you know. But we are where we are. I always remember that tagline. He was very exciting. I refer to the last CPP candidate, but Dr. Sakara was more business-like, more serious, and I thought sometimes a bit too serious. He could have livened up a bit sometimes. He could have excited the audience sometimes, and you know, injected some humor so that he could have created the needed magnetic response by the audience to really stay glued. Because there were times that you almost felt like dozing off if you are not the person who is very political and likes to listen to these things. That's my other observation. But in terms of the content, I think that it was a well-scripted message he delivered, except that for many Ghanaians, I'm sure they will be asking, why go for a CPP alternative when a lot of the things he said are being carried out by this government. For example, when you look at the DC election, the election of DCs, the government white paper, which the president issued, signed before he traveled, he had indicated that DCs will be elected in the new constitution, and that he will nominate 5 people who will go to the Public Services Commission for vetting, and 3 will be sent to the various districts for election. So I thought that had been catered for. Again, his quota for women, and saying that it's important that the 40% quota, I thought he would have credited the NDC manifesto for that. In addressing the challenges, why we were not able to meet that, he again left it just at policy. We have gone beyond. We have said in the government white paper that to the extent that we succeed with our constitutional review, all appointments to public boards, public commissions should have 30% of a gender. So if men are in the majority, they shouldn't exceed 70%. If women are in the majority, they shouldn't exceed 70%. So again, with the gender issue, this government is tackling it head on. And I thought that it's important to make that point. By and large, I think that the civil society organizations who I have heard speak have given him high marks, with the exception of the NAGRAT leaders who thought that he was a bit scanty on a policy for teachers and how he intends to address teacher welfare. The Disabled Association also thought that he was absolutely silent on their concerns, and I have heard their president say that was his only reservation with the presentation. But by and large, he did very well. There are other issues he raises, like dual citizenship, which appears to be in conflict with the current position of the Supreme Court, and to be able to implement that in the face of the latest Supreme Court pronouncement on that matter, he will have to tell us how he intends to do that, whether he would have to be looking at a promulgation of another constitution. He was very, very scanty on how he intends to do that in the face of the barrier which now confront him based on the recent Supreme Court the Supreme Court decision. But Kojo, on the issue of the NDC's statement, which was issued and signed by our propaganda secretary, and the attempt by my big sister Susan to do the chicken. I know, coming from the party of the cockerels, she obviously can do a lot of science about that. But her gestures only reminded me of the 35,000 cockerels that we are distributing across the country for small-scale poultry farmers, and I think that is an opportunity to slot that in. That if you want to do the chicken about the NDC, then you should remember our massive social intervention in that area in terms of 35,000 distribution of cockerels to small-scale farmers.
And is that what the NDC is doing? Are you chickening out of this platform, which you concede is a beautiful platform?
We are distributing chickens, but we are not chickening out. You see, the statement was clear. There are two main issues. There was a strong sense in the party that let's follow the convention, because if you go to the IEA debate and the way it is structured, you may have very little time to put out your new policies, new programs. All the others will gang up against you because you are the incumbent, so you have the PNC, CPP candidate, or, an MPP candidate taking pot shots at you, and you may not have the free room to put out very forcefully and unimpededly your program for your next term. That was one aspect. Then there was a second aspect, which had to do with the recent if you like, credibility issues of the IEA. You remember there was this report on the IEA website about abuse of incumbency. I have a copy of that report here, which stated in part, quote, however, the use of state resources in favor of the presidential candidate of the ruling MPP, including the use of state helicopters to distribute his campaign materials, as well as a last-minute flurry of sword-cutting and project commissioning activities by the president, was seen as inuring to the benefit of the ruling MPP's candidate. The ruling party's candidate also seemed to be awash in resources, and some estimated him as outspending his 7 opponents put together by as much as 30-1, unquote. So this is the report which was put on the IAA website after the 2008 elections. And really, this is not new. We had the CPP candidate in the last election complain that, Nana Akufo-Addo was using motorcades and they are all candidates. Why is one having an upper hand? Our candidate had to complain when a scheduled campaign tour in the Volta region was put off by the police because they said that the MPP candidate will be given priority, and so the NDC should wait. So it comes to me as a surprise that the IEA decided to distance itself from this report, contents which really are not debatable, everybody knew. And people have been asking whether it's because the MPP did not come out smelling of roses out of that report, and so they were forced to do its bidding. The GNA put out this statement in their newsreel and on their website, and this was the IEA's response on 15th August 2011. Quote, our attention has been drawn to an article published on the website of GNA entitled IEA slams MPP for abuse of incumbency in elections 2008. The IEA has neither authored such a publication nor conducted a survey or study to that effect. It is also totally false to say that the IEA has released any such non-existent findings. On Saturday, 13 August 2011, our premises were indeed closed. The GNA then got back, 16 August 2011, and says, quote, the editorial conference, the highest authority on editorial matters in Ghana News Agency, stands by its story. IEA slams MPP for abuse of incumbency election 2008, filed on Sunday, August 14, 2011. The conference came to this conclusion after thorough investigations it carried out, establishing that the story was sourced from the official website of the Institute of Economic Affairs. It expressed shock and dismay that a reputable institution of IEA's caliber could descend into the abyss and engage in a despicable act of removing a report it had posted on its official website since March 21, 2009, and denying its existence when GNA started serializing it. IEA stated in a press release on Monday, August 15, 2011, quote, our attention has been drawn to an article published on the website. I've read that already, so I'll leave it out.
So you have questions about the credibility of the
Conference
IEA.
was at a loss as to where the IEA was coming from because the story said IEA stated in a document made available to the Ghana News Agency in Accra on Saturday. It never said the report was made available to the agency by the IEA. And the GNA, it became, if you remember, a battle of credibility. And the GNA had the last word. It was clear to everybody, and all those who are savvy with the internet saw the roots of that report, that indeed that report was on the IEA website. So after this, there's a strong feeling in the NDC by sections that the IEA does not portray a very independent and neutral posture, and that if this report was damning of the NDC, they don't think the IEA will have gone to this extent to, as it were, discredit its own self and raise credibility issues about them. So there are those who felt very strongly about it, and these are the reasons that I have seen contained in the party's statement, the NDC party statement. Let me also add that and react to Honorable Notable's extension of this to mean disrespect for civil society and disrespect for the media. No, this is a president who, on an annual basis, opens the castle to the media. Everybody comes in and asks him questions. He's on his feet. without notes. You can ask any question from archaeology to zoology. Sometimes people have even thought some of the questions were inappropriate. The president has never been offended and has continued to open his doors.
Said that's his comfort zone. You should step out of it.
Well, I don't know how you call that comfort zone, because the journalists are called to come. They come with their own questions. There is no attempt to, if you like, stage manage the process. Out of the castle, the president takes questions, sometimes exclusive interviews, with critical questions are asked of him. He's out there in the field. There's public fora, questions come about. Recently, he was at a conference in the United States on the sidelines of the G8, critical questions from the international media. He's always availed himself, whether you may call it comfort zone or not. And I think to extend that to say that it's a disrespect to the media and civil society organization is most unfair to the NDC.
Let me go to
my good friend Sami is reminding me of the year 2000. I hope you remember that year very well. These were the same reasons President Mills, candidate Mills then, non-President Mills, assigned and did the same thing. There was this IEA debate. He refused to come. In fact, he flew to Nigeria. After the debate, he organized the media the same way he's talking and tried to portray himself that, this is a better, this is a better platform. I want to tell you something. What I said is that if you underestimate the power of the media with this particular program,
and
you will laugh at the wrong side of your mouth. Wait till January, wait till December 7th.
Perhaps you should have given that advice to President Kufuor when he didn't participate in 2004.
Let me hear you have your take on this subject, and then we will take a break and come back to a few other conversations.
Well, Abu Sakara was very articulate, well focused, and indeed, in terms of the intellectual, the brain power, I think very competitive. Of course, the question is asked as to whether the party can organize and mobilize to win an election so that he can have the opportunity to actualize his vision. But otherwise, I think that he came out very well, and I'm not surprised that almost everybody is full of praise for him. Specific issues that he raised are subject to debate, every time across the divide. And I'm sure we would go for the party's manifesto as the guideline and interrogate it in subsequent editions. But Sami made a very interesting point, which I think shows where the difference is. The point about election of DC, I'm not sure exactly what Dr. Abu Sakara was saying or what the party's manifesto articulates. But what we have in the white paper is not the same proposition that had been, canvassed for years, and I think we dealt with it here last week. It's not exactly the same format. Here is a situation where the president is nominating people. We're going for public election, all right, but it is not on a party political basis, and so there's still a comfort zone, if you like, to use for the president, and it makes sense to me anyway, because in the face of the Security and Intelligence Act, where the chairman of the district councils, security councils, are the government appointees coming from the ruling party. Until we amend this thing of non-partisan district elections, having district assembly elections, we are not going to be able to have DCs elected on party basis. This is a point that I think Mr. Kwame Nahoe does articulate very well, and I share that view. So the president has looked for a certain new approach. So I'm not sure, for all you know, Abu Sakara is not thinking along the lines of the white paper. So sometimes we've got to say so much, it's not so much what is to be done, but how is to be done. The quality you bring to bear on the management of the national situation. So at times, if you read all the manifestos, you may have the same things, if not in the same written manner, in a different way. So we're coming to quality of leadership and what you can bring to bear. But Abu Sakara made a very interesting point, which I'm not sure if everybody in the party would agree, even though I think it is the realistic point he was making. The point about, this kind of world, the ideological battle is virtually being relegated to the background.
And
people are moving into the center. It's quite a bold and courageous statement to be made by a CPP flag bearer, considering
the ideological orientation of the party. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are sections of the party who will be uncomfortable with that kind of realistic, I say, or somebody would say revisionist approach. Otherwise,
or blasphemous.
Yes, some people, the ideological dinosaurs, a word I'm not too comfortable using, may have problems with him. Otherwise, it's good. But it's unfortunate that the NDC boycott appears to have overshadowed, you know, the things that he put out there in terms of public discourse, you know. And so if you permit, I'll move to that level and deal with the NDC boycott. You know, this point about IEA credibility, is it a sufficient ground? Assuming without admitting that the IEA suffers a certain credibility relative to the incident that Sami articulated or brought to the fore, is that a sufficient basis for a government or a party to decide not to go into an event being sponsored by that organization? It's not. This same IEA, I believe, are part and parcel of the processes that led to the presidential, is it the transition bill, which has become an act, I'm told. And that's a key development in our governance system. So yes, they may not be perfect. They may have suffered some integrity deficit here and there on certain issues. And I wonder which organization or political party or individual in this country is free of this particular contradiction. Okay, so here we are, to the extent that same political parties, including Parliament and others, have collaborated with IEA to develop such a key aspect of our governance structure. I am surprised that anybody would want to use that incident to downgrade the credibility or integrity of the IEA. You know, the NDC, I remember Vice President Mills, when he was decided not to take part in the 2000 encounter, you know, they raised issues. There was this point about the president had assigned him to go to Nigeria and do some work. Indeed, when the MC for the occasion, the CNN lady, announced that as the official reason, there were boos and jeers at the State House, the International Conference Center, where over 1,400 Ghanaians had congregated. Indeed, the vice president, then, that's the present vice president, then the communications minister, gave a reason, which was published in this Freedom Forum's, you know, the document that came with the event. And that was to the effect that Mills's unwillingness to appear stemmed partly from the government's objection, quote, the unnecessary involvement and interferences of foreign individuals and organizations in the nation's electioneering process. They were pointing fingers at the Freedom Forum as an alien foreign entity that was seeking to dictate how we should manage our election process, and the CNN. Even though this particular event was organized by the GJA, GBC, and I think the Freedom Forum. So it's the same old thing again, looking for excuses that are not sustainable to attack an otherwise noble event. President Kufuor, 2004, also didn't do well, and I mean the NPP as a ruling party didn't do well when they also refused to participate. And the reasons they gave are virtually the same reasons Kwashiga is recounting today. About one, wasn't a priority. Two, the platform was not a sufficient basis in terms of appeal. You know, that Kufuor's character was already known. His objectives were, agenda was known. His achievements were known. This Jacob Bishabilante made those comments. Kwame Japan actually indicated that the organizers had not had much discussions with the president to elicit his consent to be part of the event. Some of us were disappointed, those of us who are pro-civil society and think that civil society involvement in our governance structure should be promoted, even if they are not on statutory basis. Who is suggested that what IEA is doing is a substitute for what constitutional bodies or statutory bodies will do. in terms of oversight, responsibilities, or accountability mechanisms. Nobody suggested that. It's just a compliment. And it has an appeal. It appeals more to the middle class, business community, the educated elite, that is students and all the rest. And don't underestimate it. If you've had a cliffhanger election where things have been determined by some 20, 30, 40,000 votes, it'd be dangerous, in fact, dangerously naive to ignore the essence of that kind of platform. Both parties, as incumbents, relative to this particular exercise, I think failed Ghanaians, and we have to be very honest about that. So for me, going around, ask yourself, when the Mills as vice president did not take part, we criticized him. When President Kufuor, J. Kufuor as president did not take part, we criticized him. Indeed, the NDC, if you go for the record, you will see that the NDC criticized Kufuor. You will see that the MPP criticized Vice President Mills. And when they are in government, they speak the same language.
It's the same script, different cast.
That's it. That is not fair.
Isn't there, however, some truth in the political calculation behind it? That perhaps if you are the advisor of a sitting president, knowing that there are other candidates who want his job are going to be taking pot shots at him, he's going to, be looking for space to seek to respond and position himself as president. Isn't there some truth that perhaps you may tell him,
if you lack confidence, if you lack the capacity, or if you don't have achievements that are so manifest, then you may be suffering a deficit, and then you cannot compete with those who will be aiming at, popping at you. I think that because that's not the only platform. There's your manifesto, there are your rallies, there are other political platforms. That is like a drop in an ocean. Even though I'm saying that it has its own audience, target audience. And the target, if anybody goes there to turn that platform into a propagandist platform, only to actually insult or to attack people's integrity on a show, that person will be the loser. That person will be the loser because of the descending audience that have been targeted to interrogate that particular event. So let's be honest. I mean, I thought in this case, the good professor would have had the opportunity to cure that mischief. The mischief that began with him, continued with Kufuor. He had the opportunity this time around to have cured it. Okay? But here we are.
How do they say?
Unprecedented.
The unprecedented list is getting too long. So.
Yes, so to be honest with you...
But as we tie up this conversation before our break, let me ask if anybody's got views on how we can turn the tide next time around as we seek to deepen our democracy.
If there are different formats, if you want to bring new ideas and things, bring them. But you don't bring them at this stage to, torpedo the event now. You can bring things into the future that, look, perhaps we've developed 2000, the format may have been slightly different. This time, it's even different from 2000, this 2008 format. It's not the same as, we may end up...
In the 2008 format, it was slightly different from what had happened, earlier.
2000, yes.
And that's what we are still doing.
We're open to new ideas. The organizers and all the stakeholders definitely can bring in new ideas.
What do you think?
Definitely. You have the political parties platform. I mean, we meet, they have the chairman's caucus, they have the general secretary's caucus. If there are problems with the format, there's always the avenue to speak to IEA about it. So, for me, to say that, well, you have problems with the format, you have the opportunities, and to say that we think it may be better this way. And like Kweku said, if you think that the people will be taking pot shots at your candidate, in that kind of forum, people want to listen to ideas, not the pot shots. Okay? I mean, and people want to see how different you are from the other people, so that they can make an informed thing, and not your pot shots. The pot shots, we hear them on the radio all the time. So this would definitely not be the forum to do that.
Dominic, Sam.
I think the NDC's excuse of the credibility of the IEA it's not something any Ghanaian will take or has taken at all. This is, even after that publication, IEA has been organizing events and NDC has been attending. So if you come to this particular one and you chicken out, you have chickened out because you do not have a record to defend, full stop. When it comes to MPP as a party, of course, I'm sure that people like Kweku Bako and others, the way every Ghanaian talked to when President Kufuor did not attend. We learned our lesson. So in 2008, Nana Akufo-Addo, as the incumbent party's candidate, actually participated in it. So MPP has moved away from this idea, and I thought that NDC should have joined us in realizing that if you are the incumbent, go and defend your record. Everybody was attacking Nana Akufo-Addo. We all saw it. Everybody was attacking the record of the MPP. Nana Akufo-Addo defended it. And so you will realize that most of the time he was defending and then trying to put his own policies out there. So for NDC, you have no excuse. You have no record to defend. You think that your record to be turned into shreds. But like people have said, I don't think anybody will go out there to intentionally ridicule the president. I don't think so. It is the president who should be able to stand out and say, this is what I have done, this is what I promised the people of Ghana, and this is what I have done, Sam. A, B, C, D. If you don't have it, you just forget about it.
Let me hear your final words on this.
Yeah, quite clearly, you cannot compare the 2008 situation to the current situation. In 2000, Nana Akufo-Addo was not a sitting vice president, as Professor Mills was. And the convention has still been that incumbents have not attended the IEA debate. If you wanted us to add to our tall list of unprecedented achievements, you can say that, and we will welcome it. I mean, I've told you that these are views that there were contestations. There were some who felt that we should add this to the tall list of unprecedented achievements. Now, this business of not having a record, and that is why we didn't show up, I don't think it's fair, and many Ghanaians will agree with you. It's absolutely not fair. You are trying to take advantage of this to engage in petty politicking. Everybody knows the tall list of unprecedented achievements of this government. If I was to continue, this program would not end. From the longest single-digit inflation in the Fourth Republic to the GDP growth rate of 13.5% to two new states to two new public-funded universities.
Tell me, in turning around the tide for the future, can anything be done to ensure that incumbents participate, but the format is not, necessarily untoward for them?
Yes.
What can be done?
I would want to see incumbents.
You have any ideas?
Incumbents participate. I think that it will have to come with consultation. Let the IEA open up more and bring all the political parties from the beginning. If the IEA had asked for a rep from the presidency to represent the president in discussing the debate on how it will have gone, I'm sure that we may not have come to this stage, but where you just receive an invitation letter to come and participate, so there should be more broad-based consultation, including all the political parties, and I think that we can cure this mischief moving forward.
Are we being told that the political parties had no role in this matter?
He's saying that they received a letter to come.
No, he's talking of presidency. I'm asking
I'm
political parties. Yes. And you realize there was a political party that issued this statement, not the presidency, not the Minister of Information. But I had assumed that they were stakeholders.
Indeed, the IEA, there's a lot of consultation with the parties involved.
Yes, and I'm assuming, maybe safely, that the political parties were involved along the line in terms of the need for a debate, when we're going to hold a debate, how we're going to go about it. If there was some shortfall, let's know. But that entirely not involved, I'll be surprised.
Okay, wrap up for me, Sam. And then
I'm not aware of any involvement to that detail about the debate. There have been collaborations on transition bill, on other governance issues, but on the debate, I'm not aware of it. It
will be an omission, indeed.
7 minutes after 10 on Newsfile. Let me read some of your thoughts coming through. Jerry from Adidome says, governance is not a playground where Dr. Sakara should be creating fun. Augustine says, I may remind Honorable Nitiwo, former President Kufuor dogged the IE debate in 2004. Edward from Cape Coast says, Dr. Sakara mentioned the National Development Agenda and the NDC is ignoring as recommended by the CRC. Atai Muro from Woolensey says, why won't the professor refuse to participate in the IEA debate? The party has nothing good to show and no vision for Mother Ghana. Manche Bruce in Takrady says, I think Dr. Sakara was on top. However, I think Nana Addo is a man to beat. He looks more prepared to lead Ghana. If the NDC think they've done so well, they should quit the cacophonous brawls and tell Ghanaians what they have done. A few more of your texts that have come in this morning on our conversations. I'll read them and then we'll continue shortly. Because some of us were not surprised when the news broke about the NDC not going to participate in the IEA debate. In fact, the presidency was right on that decision because it could not fulfill its promise to Ghanaians and therefore can't go through any embarrassment. Benjamin Nurupu from Nungwa says the NDC has nothing to tell Ghanaians after messing up on this Woyome matter. They are simply running away from accountability. Two texts that don't bear names. Please add your name to your text messages. The president's refusal to participate in the debate is basically based on the fact that his administration is faced with too many corruption scandals. And this one says, when are we going to start thinking of a national policy and stop this manifesto thing such that these politicians will stop toying with our lives, especially the education of our children? 1422 across networks, or you can put them on our Facebook wall, facebook.com/joy997. I'll share them with my guest and we will do our own analysis. This week, the news first broke in the Daily Graphic newspaper. And the earlier description was that we had incurred a new judgment debt of $1.5 billion for the supply of some 86 Galloper vehicles. As we got into it and sought more answers, we understood that it wasn't a judgment debt. It's a claim that is being made by Africa Automobiles Limited, a claim for an amount of $1.5 billion for, and now we're told, some 110 Galloper vehicles that were supplied between 2000 and 2001. A few questions are arising out of that. The government spokespersons have suggested that it is evidence of the sheer recklessness with which members of the previous administration handled some of these transactions. And the former chief of staff, Mr. Kojo Mpieni, has been advising the government should go to court because those vehicles were rejected in 2001 and therefore should not be paid for. Shortly, I will play back to you some of the interviews we've had on this subject right here on Newsfile. But how did the news hit you, Dominic?
Scandalous. Amazing. It's difficult to comprehend that even in 1999, a Hyundai Galloper, because it wasn't a Mitsubishi, Hyundai Galloper could cost a staggering $154,000 US. It's amazing because if I go back to my records and then all the checks show that a Hyundai Galloper at that time cost not more than $34,000 US. So if you had a brand new Galloper, state of the art, the top of the range, costing $34,000 US or thereabout, and the price was $154,000 US, that could buy at least 4 more, then it was amazing, scandalous, and ridiculous, for excuse my language. But when all this issue came up, I decided to do a bit of check to find out whether there was a contract between government to supply it or that it was just a verbal contract. I came short because nobody could produce a written contract or agreement between government at that time, the NDC government, and African Automobile Limited to be able to say that, yes, this is it. My checks from the previous government and the Kufuor administration said that they hadn't cited any contract, they hadn't cited any agreement. It was just that the government ordered the vehicles with some specifications. And when the vehicles came, they realized that most of them were old, reconditioned vehicles. And the government said, no, even if it was a verbal agreement, even if there was an agreement, we needed brand new vehicles to be able to be used by the district assembly. So if you bring us vehicles that had engine problems, even a letter you yourself had written to the parent company that had agreed that there was engine problems with these vehicles, our DCEs who took them could not use them because everybody complained that they had engine problems, they could not move, there were not the specifications the government brought. Take the vehicles back and bring the actual vehicles the government had ordered, and then we can deal with you. But in any case, we haven't seen a contract that you want to have, and that has been off and on. I remember that this particular company had 2 cases with Ghana. One had to deal with a Danish grant of 30 million euro that was given to Ghana, and they were supposed to supply buses to the Institute of Local Government. They haven't done it, and MPP took them to court. I don't know where. I'm trying to get a lawyer who handled the case for government at that time. I've been trying to get him to find out, and wherever he is, he'll be able to help me find out exactly the state of that particular thing. So I thought that if there was anybody who owed somebody, it is the government of Ghana that legitimately should demand from this Africa Automobile that particular money, so that we can supply the buses for us. That has not been done, and I hope the government will take it upon themselves to be able to do that. But for my good friend Sami to say that African Automobile is demanding 1.5 billion from Ghana as compensation and judgment and other fees, and I heard him say demurrage and houses costs and other costs, it's absolutely amazing. Where in this world can you have an interest of 855% per annum? If you just calculate 17% over 17 million over a period of 11 years, you are getting over 800% per annum on a dollar. It's ridiculous. I've not heard this before. And I just think that whoever advised Africa Automobile to say this, they are taking this country for a ride. I'm sorry to say that. In any case, if Africa Automobile thought that they had a case in this particular, why wait for MPP to move after 8 years, 2001 to 2008? Then immediately this government comes, you bring this matter up and give this kind of prizes and say that, well, government of Ghana owes you. That a vehicle, that vehicle could cost 154,000, and that the interest you are demanding is over 800% per annum. Look, even on a dollar, even if it was a conservative estimate of 20% on dollar over the 11-year period, it should not cost us more than, they should not be demanding more than 100 million if you calculate on the 17%. And for them to demand this, I think that there's something wrong. I decided to go to the 2010 consolidated report of the Auditor General on judgment debts. And it's amazing. On the 14th of May, 2010, the government of Ghana paid African Automobile 2,500,000 Ghana cedi as judgment debt.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with Ghana.
No, I'm coming.
Oh, you listen.
On the 16th of July 2010, another 2.5 was paid to African Automobile. And the reason is that a delay by government in paying promptly for the cost of vehicles, spare parts, and services rendered. Then, on the 2nd of October 2010, Ghana government paid 3.379124.71 for judgment passed on the 24th of November 2009. That was a judgment that was passed on the 24th of November 2009. I did ask the MPP ministers, or the Attorney General at the time, as the Chief of Staff, I asked, did we have any other case with African Automobile that a judgment was passed 9 months after the NDC came to do this? They don't seem to remember that African Automobile had taken us on another case. So I'm sure that my good friend will want to tell us what judgment was passed on the 24th of November 2009, the terms of the judgment, whether it was the judgment was the proceedings of the court started before this government came, or when this government came that they took us to court 9 months after it was done, or it was a court judgment, or maybe a settlement judgment, as we are trying to talk. Then if I have the information that it was galloper or not galloper, I will deal with that. But if it was galloper, that this particular 3 tranches of payments, and they are still paying, because this is just 2010. We have 2011 yet to come out that they have paid, then it's even a more serious case. First of all, let me go to the real issues of judgment debt, especially with this.
Before you go there, let me just ask you a few follow-up questions. I spoke to the former Chief of Staff, Mr. Kojo. I'll play his voice shortly. And I was asking, perhaps, let me play it and then, we would have a follow-up conversation on that one. I spoke earlier to Mr. Kojo on this subject. Take a listen to his answers to my questions.
Almost, the vehicles were not ordered during our time. They were ordered before we came in. When we came in, some of the vehicles have been delivered, if my recollection is that. And the government at that time even refused the vehicles because they were not up to the specification. So when they brought the other vehicles and they asked us for payment after inspection, the then minister and his officers said, no, this is not the type of vehicle we requested for. This is an old vehicle, reconditioned, and we're trying to send this to us as new vehicles, and therefore we won't take delivery of these vehicles. We are not going to pay for anything. This was the genesis of the whole thing, as I recollect.
And this was in 2001?
2001, yes.
I see.
2001.
Now, in terms of discussions and negotiations with this company, African Automobile, subsequent to your refusal to receive and pay for them, were there any conversations with these suppliers to try and correct the issues with specifications that you had raised?
They couldn't. They couldn't. I asked for a vehicle, maybe just for the sake of illustration. Give me a vehicle, a new vehicle, maybe air conditioners, maybe other items. You come with an old vehicle and you try to convince me that this vehicle is a new vehicle. I asked for the air conditioners, no air conditioning, and you asked me to take it. I said, sorry, this is not the type of vehicle I requested. I'm sorry, I don't need these vehicles. I can use these vehicles, so take your vehicles back. So there was no question of negotiation. The gentleman was going around all over. For example, he came to my house about 4 times, trying to convince me to ask the ministry to take the vehicles. I talked to the minister, then I said, Chief, we thought we should even try these vehicles. We gave 2 district chief executives. One of them was lucky. After traveling from Accra within a short distance, it caught fire. The other one, the engine broke down. And therefore, there's no basis for us to take these vehicles. And we made it clear to that gentleman that we just cannot take the vehicles because they were not in any good shape.
And did we perhaps, and I'm operating on the assumption that there was, a valid contractual arrangement between us and African Automobiles. Did we write to perhaps, cancel it, that based on your failure to deliver on the specifications, we have cancelled it, or we just left it hanging?
Even my recollection that there was not even that sort of written sort of agreement. That's my recollection. But we realized that the former government which ordered these 4 district chief executives when they came. So when the gentleman came to deliver...
That's part of my conversation with the former Chief of Staff, Mr. Kojo, on that subject. And I was asking whether, there may not have been a contract, as you were mentioning, but if we did order, and if they brought us something that, we didn't want, I would imagine that there'll be some documentation to reject it. Do you know in your investigation so far that in following due diligence, we did that as well and didn't just leave the vehicles out there to rot after a verbal comment that we don't like it?
No, I think that, like I said, I'm very sure, like the former Chief of Staff said, that there is a written communication to the principals and the directors of the Africa Automobile to tell them that, no, we think that if you want to bring these vehicles, then bring them at the specifications that we ask you to bring. But I've not been able to get that particular document from the former Chief of Staff or even from the Deputy Minister, Ose Pempe, who was handling that particular schedule. So he says he's going to go through his archives, and if there is that document, I will give. Otherwise, I would have turned in as the evidence for it. But like I said, for me, even the price of that vehicle, the interest that they are asking for is amazing. I've not heard it before. And I hope that government will be able to tell me why you will sign an agreement for somebody to come in for 110 vehicles, somebody to come and tell you that that vehicle is $154,000 in 1999 when the actual price was $34,000 US. Somebody must explain why this country, there was that massive attempt to rid this country of this kind of thing. In many countries, the African automobile will not be able to bring this matter up again. In many, many, many countries, because by this time the police should be the police should be inviting them for questioning. Because if they had paid, if the government at that time had paid, that means that they would have paid for one vehicle the price of 4. And I think that we should look at that. 2, if you are a government, the first and most, the first and ultimate interest you have is to defend the people of Ghana, not to do politics of it. So the first thing is that when Africa Automobile decided to say that, okay, you owe us $1.5 billion US, the first thing this government should have done was to call members of the Kufuor administration who handled this thing and ask that, what are the facts regarding this? Not a single person was called. The first time we heard was for them to put it on the 27th of June 2012 graphic that this was the case. Whether it was political equalization on the Wyoming case or whether it was to divert attention, I really do not know. But I think that the most prudent thing was to safeguard the interests of the people of Ghana. Why would a debt of 17, granted that the debt was even 17 million, balloon to 1.5 within 11 years? What sort of interest? And when you calculate the interest, it's about 850% per annum. Why would anybody do that? And why would we be negotiating with such a company? Because when you come to me and you say, well, you owe me, I owe you an amount of money. When I start negotiating with means I've agreed that I owe you, then I start negotiating with you. I think that the government can do the people of Ghana good if they allow Africa Automobile to take us to court and go and prove in the court that we have a valid document with you, a contract with you. This is the contract. We brought these gallopers. The gallopers are strictly what you asked for, and that you owe me and you do not pay. And so I'm calculating interest. I'm calculating this as my expenditures, and this is the compensation I'm looking for. That will help us. But the politics that we are doing today, trying to shift the blame to MPP or NDC, will not help this nation. It won't help us because people have taken us for granted. And I've done my checks. I will not put it out there. It will be surprising for a journalist to do the checks on the principals of African Automobile. Who are the people who own that company? Yeah, you will see the angle this whole thing is going. I think that is not good. They have a lot of people from this the NDC government who have interest in this company. Ooh. Well, I think that it will be unfair for me to start mentioning names now, but I will do as we go on within the week with this particular topic. Otherwise, it's amazing that anybody will do that. But just as an add-on, if there is one government that saved this nation a lot of debt or a lot of responsibility on judgment, there is the Kufuor administration. No, you know what? I'll tell you why. The fact that the Kufuor administration set up what we call the National Reconciliation Commission saved this nation billions and billions. I'll tell you. No, I'll tell you. Susan, just wait. Said that billions and billions and billions of dollars. You know, when the National Reconciliation did two things, it reconciled people, and then it also saved this nation the potential to be able to take this government to court on compensation. Do you know the amount of money a Makala woman who had her shop burned could have asked the people of Ghana to pay? Do you know people whose properties were seized, people who were whipped, people who were... Do you know the amount of money they would have asked the government of Ghana to pay? If Africa Automobile says that, look, you owe me 79, it's 1.5 billion. Do you know people who lost millions of dollars in those days, the amount of money they would have asked for if we hadn't done the National Reconciliation Commission? Do you know the amount of money?
I thought there were indemnity clauses in our constitution that, you know, provided indemnity from liability of that kind. But let me ask you a specific question before I go to Sam. If indeed we rejected those vehicles, and we did so according to proper procedure, who gave permission for them to be parked from about 2001 at the local government offices where they've been sitting for all of these years?
Well, like I said, it's difficult to be able to know why they were parked there. Probably because they took them from the port. Of course, you don't want the mortgage charges, you have to pay your taxes, you don't want the mortgage charges, you don't want warehouse charges, and then maybe they said, well, I brought your vehicles, and obviously they were parked there. And so The government says that, look, we are not interested in that. And because of the front and back and those kind of things, they just allow them.
Is that a matter of
but
fact?
I'm
Do you
going
know
to check.
that as a matter of
no,
fact?
I know that if that's what happened, if they were packed them from 2001, that could have been the only answer to it. But we are even yet to check whether they were really packed there from 2001 till date. That's even the other issue that we need to be sure of.
Well, Kojo. I thought we had come here to discuss facts and the concrete reality of situations. But we have come here and we are being led into wild speculations. Wild speculations. Nobody has said that the price of one galloper in the year 2000 was 154,000. And yet it has been thrown out there as if it is fact. We are being told now that Africa Automobile is owned by people who are close to the NDC. We are not told their names. We are not told who those people are, where we can find them, and yet it is thrown out there. Wild speculation. We are told that the Kufuor administration saved us a lot of judgment debts. Another wild speculation. No fact. This entire, then they go into 2010 Auditor General's report. Because they see Africa Automobile has received judgment debts, they link it to this particular contract. As if the only contract Africa Automobile has ever carried out in Ghana, the only transaction they have ever engaged in is this gallopers that we are discussing. And so if there are some payments they have received from the courts, from judgment debt, as cited in the Auditor General's report, then it is this. Another wild speculation. I think that it's not fair. It's not fair to our viewers and our listeners when we come to discuss these very serious matters. Now, what are the facts? Last Tuesday, I had an interview with the Daily Graphic on a wide range of issues. The Daily Graphic had sought my take on the raging national debate about judgment debts and how government view this matter. In that interview with the Daily Graphic, I sought to put out two main points. The first point is that judgment debts are avoidable in some instances, and that if all politicians decide to be prudent, decide to be very dutiful and lawful, without recklessness, without pettiness, we can avoid a large chunk of the sums of money that we have been paying in judgment debts. It was in that instance that I cited the Africa Automobile case as an example and asked Graphic that they could go to the Institute of Local Government and see how these gallopers have been lying there and have been rotting away since 2001. And I gave the background about how Cabinet had decided in 1999 to import vehicles or to get vehicles for the 110 district assemblies that we operated at the time. These 110 district assemblies had already, in an earlier arrangement in 1994, been given Pajeros, also from Africa Automobile Limited. The Ministry of Local Government was taxed to then go and engage in a trade-in with Africa Automobile so that they can bring in new vehicles, because the DCs had begun to complain that the vehicles had, after 5-6 years, they needed new vehicles. That is the genesis. Africa Automobile brings in 23 of these vehicles in the year 2000. By August 2000, the vehicles had been allocated to 23 district assemblies. The remaining 87 arrived after the election, and then the MPP government refused to complete the transaction or honor the obligations. We have had 4 reasons so far. Maxwell Kofi Juma has said that gallopers are not good vehicles, they don't want to use them, they didn't want to see them. The minister, his boss, Mr. Kwabena Ejedakun, or Kojo Ejedakun, has said that there was no documentation at all. That is why, no documentation, no contract, that is why they didn't deal with Africa Automobile. Though he admits that Africa Automobile has been coming to his office anytime he was in the office and making claims until 2007. The third reason we have had has come from the former Chief of Staff, Mr. Kojo Ochirimpieni, who has said that Africa Automobile did not meet specifications. And so they didn't want to have, we have just heard him, he said that one of the vehicles even got bent on their way to this destination, and they didn't want to have anything to do with Africa Automobile. It is interesting that you say you don't have the documentation, and yet you are able to know the specifications and conclude that they didn't meet specification. The fourth reason we have had is that the earlier 23 vehicles which came in did not work very well. And so government took the decision that they would not have anything to do with Africa Automobile any longer. These are the four reasons we have had.
And these are reasons, just to interrupt you, these are reasons that they are giving in radio interviews.
In radio interviews from different
people. You
are
being accused, not you as a person, but your government is being accused of attempting a case of political equalization here. But isn't this evidence of the very reason for which, if indeed there's a genuine case here, you should probably be engaging with them and finding the facts so that it informs whatever negotiation is going on?
I'll come to that in a jiffy. Let me just conclude the graphic interview aspect. Then I put out a second aspect to the debate on judgment debt and said that the impression has been created that judgment debt started only under this administration, that Professor Mills introduced judgment debt, that even on campaign tours now, the Nana Akufo-Addo tours, I'm hearing statements, I'm hearing speeches. We will not engage in judgment debt. We will not do chop-chop. To create the impression as if judgment debt in itself is corruption, is a whole, if you like, fleecing of resources where a political party decides that you go to court, win some judgment, and I meet you in the corner and collect my share. And I thought that was dangerous. So I then presented, and that was the first time we made public list of MPP judgment debts, and cited a few examples in the interview, where I said that even on January 7, when President Mills was being sworn in, judgment debts were being paid. Mr. Ike Owusu received 3 million new Ghana cedis. Ni Kojo Danso, 100,000 Ghana cedis. 8th January, when the first batch of ministers were sworn in, got their instruments of office on the 26th of February, 2009. And yet, 8th January, judgment debt of 6,133,000 was being paid to Alhaji Yusuf Ibrahim. And there's a tall list, over 100 judgment debts here. 2008 alone, 2004 judgment debts, 10 million to Telecom Malaysia, $250,000 to Telecom Malaysia, another 100,000 pounds to Telecom Malaysia. So I put the interview in perspective, that it is important that we don't criminalize judgment debts per se. If we have had problems with 1 or 2 judgment debts, the country thinks that there are issues there. Let us move in to address those issues. We all agree on those controversial judgment debts, and let us make sure that we follow through to those controversial ones. Anybody who has engaged in any wrongdoing, let's punish the person, let's have the truth. But to engage in this hasty generalization all over, even sometimes the proceedings of Public Account Committee and all of comments that are made, statements that are made, impression is created as if only NDC is paying judgment debts, NDC introduced judgment debts are corruption. So that was what I sought to portray. You can argue that the Daily Graphic might not have done a very fantastic job in its presentation and all of that, but I don't edit the paper and I would not delve into that. Now, coming to the gallopers issue, which has become the most interesting aspect to the media and to the public about that interview that I granted the Daily Graphic on Tuesday. I hold in my hands here, and let me announce on your platform for the first time, Kojo, that Professor Kwame Nkrumah has decided, he was a local government minister at the time, he has decided he will hold a full-blown press conference on this subject because of the angles it is going. Dominic Nuttall saying 154,000 cedis, for example, this morning for a cost of galloper when nobody has said that. So he will bring out all the issues, all the documentations and all of that. But I just want to cite one document. I hold in my hands here a letter written by the Honorable Atachia, who was lawyer for Africa Automobile Limited. It's on his letterhead, Zu Achia & Co., legal practitioners. And if you know his signature, this is his signature. he writes on 5th August 2003, quote, "Dear Sir, heading, the overflowed issue of the supply of 110 gallopers, the breach of contract, and the implications for the golden age of business. I act for and on behalf of African Automobile Limited. As a preface to this all-important issue, my client congratulates you on your appointment as a Minister of Local Government and Rural Development." And this is a letter addressed to Honorable Kojo Ejedakon, MP, a Minister for Local Government and Rural Development. "My client is confident that you will perform incredibly well in this strategic office. Needless to say that your appointment has given my client the confidence that this issue will be resolved amicably. Now, the essence of this letter. My firm and unqualified instructions are that in 1994, the ministry ordered and my client supplied 110 Mitsubishi Pajeros. The vehicles were put to good use for more than 5 years. Due to the reliability of the vehicles supplied and the quality of the after-sales service provided by my client for all that period, the ministry approached my client to trade in the 110 Pajeros for 110 brand new Galloper station wagons. After several meetings and discussions, a contract was secured as evidenced by my client's pro forma invoice dated 5th January 2000 and the ministry's letter of confirmation dated 6th January 2000. By the contract, your ministry bound itself over to meet the following payment schedules. Payment with order, $1.5 million. First installment within 6 months from receipt of your order, $758,860 US. Second installment within 12 months from receipt of your order, $732,460 US. The contract also included a term that in the event of the ministry defaulting in the payment schedule, whatever amount is outstanding will attract the interest of 1% per month, bearing in mind that the transaction was dollar denominated. The contract also provided for part delivery of the vehicles. By the principle of set-off, the value of the 110 used Mitsubishi Pajeros duly assessed by VANEF STC will reduce the consideration for the 110 Gallopers. Now, this point is important because I've heard other people say the government at the time made Africa Automobile value the Pajeros themselves.
The valuation was done by VANEF STC.
There was conflict of interest. Attached in this letter states that VANEF STC did the valuation. It was in late January 2000, I am instructed, that your ministry handed over to my client a check in the sum of 6 billion, I'm sure that's old Ghana cedis. The ministry knew or ought to have known that the check would not be immediately honored upon presentation. Having due regard to Bank of Ghana's treatment of the government's monetary undertakings, there was no full disclosure of this material fact by your ministry. It was after a period of 3 clear months that the check of 6 billion was credited to my client's account. The conversion of the cedis to dollars, the currency of the transaction, was hit by the debt of foreign currency. Our banker had to do a piecemeal conversion of the 6 billion into dollars, and the same was completed by October 2000. This is the history of the first fundamental breach of the contract. The second payment by your ministry to discharge its obligation under the contract, which was in the sum of 2 billion, suffered a similar fate. Please find below a breakdown of the financial inflow from your ministry, which totally breached the terms of the contract. And then the terms are provided. Prior to performing your part of the contract, your ministry requested for an urgent delivery of 23 Gallopers, which my client in utmost good faith supplied. I am further instructed that when the ministry failed, refused, and or neglected to raise the monies for the due performance of the contract, my client suppliers diverted part of the order because of the time value of money. Having realized that the ministry was financially handicapped to meet its payment commitments, my client used its own resources and successfully imported the Gallopers. Immediately, the suppliers shipped the vehicles. My client presented the bill of lading to your ministry. This was in year 2001. By some inexplicable calculations, on the 20th of September 2001, the Auditor General wrote to my client recommending the abrogation of the contract for non-performance. As chronicled above, the non-performance was at the instance of the ministry. The Auditor General seems to suggest that the ministry should profit from its own wrongdoing and at the same time holds my client responsible. I hold the humble view that the treatment being meted out to my client is neither business-friendly nor business-like, as the same undermines the golden age of business profile of our dear government. I trust that you will conclude this long-standing contract, having due regard to the fact that my client has bent over backwards to import the vehicles, with serious financial implications to it. This is when the ministry did not have the financial strength to honor its solemn financial undertakings. I have already advised my client that there is no political dimension to this transaction because it does not even make economic sense to perform a contract when the other party is ready to perform its part of the bargain.
Okay, so
the financial just 3 lines.
Quickly.
The financial stalemate is very expensive and unproductive. I am confident that you will remedy this unfortunate situation and conclude this contract to obviate the necessity to seek legal redress, counting on your usual sense of professionalism and business edge in this long drawn-out matter. Yours sincerely, Atachia, signed. As if he was a prophet. This is where we are today. There was no resolution. They just looked at Africa Automobile in the face and had all these reasons, conflicting reasons that we are getting. My point in this interview was, if the MPP government felt strongly that Africa Automobile has not met its terms, they have breached their contract and all of that, there are proper legal ways that you proceed on to abrogate this, to end this, so that we don't have a situation where we have today. So you create this situation, they go to court, and this is a matter still pending. I hope that we are not held in contempt because it's still pending in the courts. Then when in the final analysis payments have to be made, the present government is then accused of paying cronies, engaged in judgment debt politics, which is detrimental to the state. So this is the context within which I raised this particular matter. Okay,
Sam, just to clear a few things before I get my other panelists to comment on. As at now, Africa Automobile is in court on this matter.
Yes, on this matter.
But while the court case is going on, government is negotiating to settle out of court with them.
Yes, it's part of the court processes. The courts have said, go and see if you can reach a settlement and come back to me. And then I'll take your negotiated agreement as what will be the settlement which you are obliged to pay. So that is where we are. But as I indicated, we are deadlocked because we don't agree with the claims, the demands that Africa Automobile is making. We think it's too much on the high side, and it's not something we can part ways with.
So then let me go back to the first question that I asked you. The argument is that the argument being held by, or being put out by those in the previous administration that Africa Automobile has no claim here because in their view, for the various reasons as you have mentioned, there's no claim here. And they are saying that what you are doing just amounts to trying to do political equalization. And this is where my question comes in. Wouldn't it be prudent to engage with them as you seek to engage with Africa Automobile and find out what the real facts are and then proceed to strengthen your position in taking a decision?
Well. This contract started with the NDC government in 1999. We are seized with all the documentations. The cabinet decisions are there. We have all those records. The only part that we may need the MPP is probably why they refuse to deal with them and all of that. And if you think that it is necessary to include them, despite all these conflicting signals they are sending, I don't think there's any problem at all. All of this public discussion and public exposure is also part of the process. It's part of good governance, full transparency. Let everybody say what they know about a transaction. And I think that in the final analysis, the national interest will be served.
And then just finally, if this graphic interview was about judgment debts, Africa Automobile isn't a judgment debt yet. And what is your bringing it in as evidence then?
I was bringing it in to say that if we had been prudent, if we had exercised due diligence, we had not derelicted our duties, we shouldn't have gotten to a stage where Africa Automobile even takes us to court. Okay. If we felt strongly that they have even breached, just for the sake of argument, that they've breached the terms of their contract, take proper processes, take them to court, even let them refund the initial payments that we have given them, and then this matter is settled. You don't do any of this, the thing lingers on, the vehicles are in your custody at the Institute of Local Government, and as Mr. Kojo Mpieni said in your interview the last time, he says that the MD of Africa Automobile thought he was untouchable. Okay. So they wanted to show him where
I understand
power lies.
Dominic, I'll come back to you,
before
but I have to give my other guests an
before
opportunity to have a say.
No, before especially Coco comes in, I'm throwing in
Like,
something.
you know
I'm throwing. No, excuse me. Even you, I'm throwing in something. All of us can help. It's a national interest, so all of us can help. Are we saying that as government and as people representing our interests, we are taking a letter from the lawyer of the company as the truth, and so based on that letter, we can then say that they have a contract with us?
That's not what
no,
I'm
excuse
saying.
me, that's what you are reading now. 2, are we also saying that from that letter where it says that the contract is a pro forma invoice? Okay, Cabinet can take a decision.
He says there was an invoice.
He says
He says there was a contract as evidenced by an invoice and a confirmation letter from the ministry.
Yes. So me, first of all, Cabinet can take a decision. That's not a problem that there should be a trading, but there should be a valid signed document, a valid signed contract. If you tell me that it's a pro forma invoice, I'm afraid.
No, there's a
Look,
valid
excuse me.
contract.
You are talking like a lawyer for the company now, or you are talking like a representative of the company. Mind you, our
Not at all.
government, you should look at our interests.
If I was speaking
Okay.
for them,
Susan,
I
coming.
wouldn't be saying that we
Susan,
don't
coming.
agree with their claims,
Let's
or
hear
that
you,
their
Susan.
claims are
Okay.
outrageous. I wouldn't be saying that.
Before I start, this whole issue, it just makes a case for the presidential transition bill, so that we have a long period of transition where, we can deal with some of these things. But when I am coming to the substance of things, the first thing that comes into my head is organized irresponsibility. Really, organized irresponsibility on both sides. Okay, you keep hearing the conflicting, stories. One, there was no contract. I think Honorable Ajay was called at first. He said that there was no contract. Then they called Mr. Mpieni and he said, well, Honorable Ajay doesn't know about it because it was Banredu who was there and things. Then it makes it shaky because there's no continuity. There's a minister, the minister is changed, and it looks as if the position is there. There must be continuity. It also speaks about our public service, because the public service is supposed to be strong. When the political heads change, things that have been going on should continue, such that when there's a new political head, the person ought to be briefed on what is there and what is going on and what will come in the future. So our public service, it also looks, we must also look at the public service. What kind of continuity are we having? Because ministers are changing by the day. And you cannot say, oh, well, it was this minister and that, because whatever you come and meet there, as that minister, you take responsibility of the previous minister's actions. So, we ought to look at this again. There are certain questions that Sam has not answered. He's saying that the cars did not cost 154,000 per acre, but we are hearing 17 million and we are hearing 110. The natural assumption is to say that, okay, the 110, what actually considers that 17 million? We want to know, is it spare parts, is it et cetera, because we want to have the proper accountability of our money's use. We want to know also how that 17 million has come to that 1.5 billion. Those are things that people are interested in. You're throwing figures out there that frighten people, and people are coming for single spine, multiple spine, et cetera, and they hear these kind of figures, then people are worried, and then you would have all these unrest because yes, you have been irresponsible in other ways. Now, another thing. This thing happened in the NDC time, and then MPP took over and MPP refused to pay. NDC was in opposition. Opposition, in being in opposition, does not mean you fold your arms up and you forget about the things that it is your duty to say that, look, certain things that we had or we know about are happening now. In opposition, it's part of governance. That they should have created. They were in parliament. They should have created because they knew about it. I'm sure the automobile guy had spoken to them that, look, the people are not paying me. These are things that should have come up in the parliament of the Kufuor regime to say that, look, we did this thing, or, this thing has happened. Where is the case going to? All parties should have been involved. It should not have just been folded your arms and automobile waited for 8 years to come and then you now come up with this issue. you had the responsibility as a party in opposition to query some of the actions of the MPP, and this was a question that you should have asked and not allowed those vehicles to be sitting in and rotting. That is our taxpayers' money, you know. As both MPP and as NDC, like I said, you have shown irresponsibility towards the people of Ghana in the way you handle their public purse. You know, Yes, because as MPP, when you came, you said there was no contract, and yet you said you used all the vehicles and you found this and this. You should have dealt with that matter and settled it in such a way that it does not come back to haunt us, 10, 12 years down the line. You know, as NDC, as I said, you had the contracts in opposition, you did not deal with it, you allowed it to slide. The person comes back because maybe he feels comfortable with you more than he felt with, and so he comes, and then you now start paying on something that somebody has said there is no contract. I mean, the whole thing, you know, it's murky. You know, there ought to be some clarity on it, because our monies are going. Some monies have been paid. You still have not answered the question whether those monies that were paid have to do with this issue, or have to deal with a separate issue.
He has over 10 cases in the courts.
So it has to. So it has to do.
The MPP wouldn't pay them. You heard the chief of staff.
You see, but I'll take as CPP
and
on
you
this
heard him. They suspect that the company is pro-NDC. You heard him a while ago. So they set out to teach them a lesson.
No, that's
whether it's pro-NDC or it's pro-MPP or whatever it is, you know, both parties or both regimes have not, acquitted themselves well. And, judgment debt as an issue will be there. It is how we deal with it. Like every situation, people will, exploit, loopholes in it. We have to sit down and look at it holistically.
What will be your prescription specific to this matter on how to get the facts out and how best to deal with it, so that if indeed some liabilities lie there and some persons, made the state incur those liabilities, we deal with those. If as has been argued, there are no liabilities as well, we're able to put this matter to rest. What will be your prescription on how to get that done?
First, let's all accept that there has been some irresponsibility, and we are not apportioning blame, but we are coming to solve it, as it should, without, coloration or political coloration. One, let's see the contract documentation, on that. Let's see whether monies have been paid. What that 17 million, if there's no documentation, how did that come about? If there's a loophole like that where ministers or public servants can just give directives of 17 million verbally, that ought to be stopped. There ought, anything that should happen, there should be documentation. If there's no documentation, it didn't happen. We need to look at that. And from there, if there was no contracts, why those 23 cars that we were using, we started using it. No contract, but we started using 23 of them. Let's pay for, if those are the ones that we're paying for, let's pay for them. Because we have taken it, we're using it. Okay? That should maybe satisfy, automobile or whatever in part of the negotiations. The civil service, what kind of support, do they need to ensure that there is continuity when it comes to such things? You have a minister, he leaves, another minister comes. What kind of, briefing is he getting on the substantive things that are costing the taxpayer? We need to be looking at these and then learning from these lessons so that we can use them.
We've just hit 11 o'clock on Newsfile this Saturday morning. Kwekubaku is just about to have his take. Let me read a few text messages that are coming through. Mancha Bruce in Takrade continues to send us comments on Facebook. It says, let the government know that corruption never has been compulsory. It's a choice. A healthy democracy requires decent society. It requires that we are honorable, we are generous, we are tolerant and respectful. Majid says, those who are defrauding the state through judgment debts will account for every peso of our money. pay to their allies. Wuni Fatah Tamale says the MPP should know that the NDC is to win the election on the basis of promises made and the massive infrastructure seen all over the country, and not the fanciful debate where people come to exhibit gargantuan grammar and self-aggrandizement. Patrick Amenyo from Ho says, kindly let us know how much each Ghanaian will pay if this 1.5 billion debt is shared among Ghanaians. Owusu from Sunyai says, is the NDC government at loggerheads with the past government? Why this mess and misinformation coming out just because of a lack of collaboration? Kweku.
Yeah, Guru, first and foremost, I am not sure, and I haven't heard it, anybody claiming that the phenomenon of judgment debts began with the Mills administration. I haven't heard that anywhere. Today, my brother Sami gives me the impression that has been what was put out there. I haven't heard it.
Or maybe you spent too long in the States.
I was in touch, you know, because thanks to ICT. And also, I think the problem had been with some particular judgment debts.
Yeah.
That's where the arguments have been.
But
and then
generalization
the
was certain.
quantum paid within a space of time as
Generalization.
whether was prudent or not. But the phenomenon of judgment debts, I remember many of us have said even right from Nkrumah days to today, it's been there. So let's put that aside. And then the point about some judgment debts, this long list, I realized that some of them prepared this and put out there. Because if you look at some of the media houses that are quite friendly to government, this last week we've been bombarded with these things. And Sami has a copy here. Yike Owusu. Does it ring a bell? I'm sure it's Kowus.
I don't know.
I'm sure.
I don't know him.
Kowus, a victim of AFRC conspecification. Kowus Motors. You remember? One of the indigenous, brilliant, bright Ghanaian businesses that we destroyed in the process of dispensing revolutionary justice. Recklessness, the source of that, emotional outburst. You remember Alhaji Yusuf, his name has been mentioned here. What was it for? Demolition of a $5 million hotel. It was in court. Eventually, Kufuor's administration went for out-of-court settlement. It moved down from 12 million to 5 million. He decided to dispense with the interest and all the rest. I see the dates here as 8th January 2009. Kowus is 7th January 2009. I'm not sure if that was the day payment was effected. In looking at our financial arrangement system, I'm not sure. And I remember the transition team indicated they froze a lot of payments of so many things. The decision may have been taken to effect payment, to advise, instruct. But if payment had been done, and I haven't checked with Alhaji Yusuf if he's indeed received his money, but if he had, I'm not sure it was paid under the Kufuor administration. It might have been paid under the Mills administration. Not a big deal, but I'm just making the point that so the dates really can be misleading. Now, you see, there's one thing that is happening. Africa, no, maybe let me clear this one too before. The question about
those payments have been made already.
They have nothing to do with the
Gallopers.
Okay. Absolutely nothing. And if you read the remarks, you'll be clear. And indeed, they were in court. My document has fallen. I wanted to refer to it, but they were in court.
I'll get it for you.
Over some problems they had with the Ministry of Manpower.
For those of you who are listening on radio, you are missing this. Sam Okudetwa Blackwell just got up and went across the studio to go pick up Kweku Bako's documents and help him out.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Sami.
With it.
At least on this call, perhaps we'll have a coincidence of the point is this. They were in court on some matters. It's a credit facility. They gave, this is one of the rates. It's Africa Automobile, which are plaintiff, and the versus the Ministry of Employment, Manpower Development, and the Attorney General. And this had to do with some monies that we owed them after they had serviced vehicles. yes, service vehicles and all the rest. From 1997 to 2000, they were not paid. When the Kufuor administration came into office, they made claims that too, they were not paid. There were arguments. Auditor General raised queries. So the court at one stage appointed a referee to deal with the matter. In fact, Mr. Bebeku Mensah, Chief Director, now incidentally the Secretary to the President, he signed that credit agreement with them. Alongside, he was then Chief Director of the Ministry of Employment and Social Welfare. Okay, 16th May 1997. This was there alongside one CK Akabu and Mr. Felix Botsi. I can't pronounce it.
Okay, so that has nothing to do with these gallops.
Yes, so please, there's an extension. Now, you see, I was having a little difficulty. Today, Sami has tried to cure the mischief, but not sufficiently, by bringing Atachia's letter into the public domain. I was having a difficulty that with all this discussion going on, conspicuously silent is African Automobile. They haven't spoken. They are not talking. And unfortunately, we had government spokespersons, particularly my own good friend Sami, doing the talking. It was a serious omission. And virtually, it appeared he was talking for Africa Automobile.
No.
Today, Sami has indicated that he had a problem with the graphic report. The first graphic report came out Wednesday. We haven't heard of a rejoinder from my brother yet.
Even the date they gave for when the gallopers arrived is wrong.
Okay, but listen, this is what graphic said. It is estimated that government would have to pay 1.5 billion as the cost of the vehicles and accrued interest. A Deputy Minister of Information, Mr. Samuel Okudzoto-Ablakwa, disclosed this to the Daily Graphic in connection with the payment of judgment debt by government. Graphic is sourcing you. They are saying you gave them the figure $1.5 billion as coming from
Africa Automobile.
Africa Automobile.
Yeah, those are the
Now, Sami, the following day, the same Daily Graphic did a report, this time a reaction from the former minister. Yeah. And listen to what they said again. They said, Deputy Minister of Information, Mr. Samuel Okudzoto-Ablakwa, had told the Daily Graphic that 86 vehicles imported into the country for distribution to the district assemblies had been left on the compound of the Institute of Local Government Studies to go waste. He said the vehicles which were ordered during the first NDC administration, I think it should be the second, arrived in 2001, and that the refusal of the government to pay $17 million, but for the refusal of government to pay the $17 million, the cost of the vehicles, had caused the amount to shoot up to 1.5 billion. Again, they have attributed it to you, not to Africa Automobile. Graphic is not here claiming it had done any independent checks or double checking with Africa Automobile. It is a Deputy Minister of Information on behalf of Ghana who was telling us that these people are claiming, indeed, and it was within the context of judgment there, as you said. So you go and read some of the newspapers. Gangantua, this is more Gangantua than the Woyomi, Waterville, CP put together. That was the contest. So it was, and Sami, I have to be very honest, a very shoddy and poor attempt at equalization, which has backfired. In fact, it arrived dead on arrival. But let's go beyond that, because I think
who was trying to equalize? Who?
Your government and you.
Government. Using the state-owned Daily Graphic and other media outlets throughout the week. But this has backfired badly, and it's not good enough for integrity of government. Again, I ask myself, this government must be aware that there is a serious fraud office report on this matter, 2002. They completed investigations and sent a docket to the Attorney General's department. The Auditor General of Ghana also did audit investigations, completed its investigations. It's within government circles. We were having all these discussions in the absence or without reference to serious fraud office report to Auditor General's report, and even to the court documentation. I have no idea they went to court on this matter. I have no idea. Sami is now telling us they did. The court documents I have has nothing to do with this. What defense did government or the state put up in court? The automobile people, they gave statements to Serious Fraud Office. They gave statements to the Auditor General. They gave statements to IRS, all the rest. It's available. It's within government domain. These are not things we are now going to search for. And nobody can come and change his statement. Government itself, if they went to court, government definitely put in a defense. I don't know when they went to court, according to Sami 2004. And according to Sami, this government has asked them to withdraw the case from court. You've appealed to them.
We've asked for settlement.
Yeah, but you said so here a few moments ago.
Yeah.
Like you appealed to them to withdraw from court. What is the defense that we put up then? But government is continuous, as we've been saying. The state is the Attorney General of today of the opinion that the state had no case and that Africa Automobile had a better case. So we are now inclined to proceed by out of court and negotiate a deal with them. Have we checked our report, the report conducted by completed by the Serious Fraud Office? Have we checked the Auditor General's report? Have we checked all these things before we are disposed towards withdrawing a case from court and go to negotiate? And if I heard Sami very well, at one stage he said, oh, the 1.5 billion, yes, that's their claim. Yeah. This was a subsequent, for me, a revision, initial of the view that Graphic had put out there. But we were inclined to paying about a third of 1.5 billion. At least, no, but I heard you say so.
I said that it would not. I didn't want to put a figure out as to where we were. When I said we were deadlocked.
Yeah, but you were your ceiling was a third.
I said that it would not even be up to a third. That's what I said.
But I can tell you,
it would not even be up to a third.
I can't
even
believe
20 million is too much.
You know, it's not personal. I mean, you know, this has nothing to do. So I believe that, look, that mindset, and that's what the Graphic and the other media reports sought to do. There's a mindset of saying that our predecessor didn't do the right thing. You are admitting that your predecessor was guilty of something. And for that matter, it means that African Automobile are okay, they are right.
What is your mindset?
We proceed on the basis. I am saying they have no case. That's I wanted to do as a conclusion, but I wanted to deal with the issues. And you know what? This matter is not when I saw it on front page of Graphic, I was surprised because it's not a new case.
No, it's not.
It's been running from 2001 to about 2006 and 7. Indeed, in 2001, the Chronicle did a certain story, 2 stories, and Mr. Kwamna Hoy and Mrs. Cecilia Johnson were compelled to issue a rejoinder. I would want to read a little bit of it. This is dated, it's an open letter to Kojo Baredu, Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, dated 26 October 2001. The relevant portions relative to Gallopies. This is what Kwame Nahue and Cecilia Johnson said. This procurement program started in 2000 and therefore not a 3-year issue, was a pending matter contained in our handing over notes to your administration. As you are aware, it is a program approved by Cabinet to purchase the Gallopers to replace the 4x4 Pajeros allocated to the DCs in 1994. Cabinet also approved the purchase of sanitation vehicles for all the district assemblies. All matters related to these subjects are documented in the records of the ministry. The transaction was hampered by unfortunate circumstances beyond the control of the ministry or even the company. First was the non-release or the very late release of the District Assembly's Common Fund, the source of the funding in 2000. Second, as and when the funds were released, checks issued to make the order effective were not authorized by the Bank of Ghana to be cashed for several months. An example is what the Chronicle quoted in the story. A check issued in June 2000 was not honored until November 2000, despite many interventions with the bank. Third, provision of foreign exchange was a major problem. It is historical fact that 2000 was a very difficult year for the country as far as foreign exchange was concerned. And the transaction was caught in the foreign exchange squeeze. Kojo, you see, it's a very simple thing. The vehicles, those that the MPP administration rejected on basis that they didn't meet specifications, in whose possession were they? Who was the ownership at that period? Who was paying the demurrage or that my brother is talking about, which perhaps has added to the cost? Who was paying? In the government bonded warehouse, who was paying? The company? Why? If they were paying, why? The ownership remained with them. They knew that. They could have sold those vehicles on the open market or elsewhere and cut their losses. It was clear the government of Ghana had declined the offer. It was so clear. You see, this discussion must be done on basis of certain things. The contract must be produced immediately, made public, that so-called contract. And we mean contract, not a lawyer's letter that is making references to a so-called contract. That's why the fact that this is a politically aligned person in terms of the previous government.
So Atacha is not credible?
No, he was doing his work as a lawyer.
Could you make a point? I have to take a break in like a minute.
The Serious Fraud Office report must be produced. The Auditor General's report must be produced. Let's have the discussions within this context. Indeed, Mr. Hoy and Mrs. Johnson were all invited before some investigative panels.
Yeah. Many investigators.
Yes, about talking of this particular matter.
Yeah, and they found nothing.
No,
the MPP found nothing.
No, please. You see, you are getting me wrong.
Just a minute.
I am not for a moment pronouncing them guilty or not guilty. That's not what I'm doing. I am looking for what was produced. Statements that they issued, particularly those that the Africa Automobile issued, and the things we said. That's why I said even the court are defense. So please, don't get me right. Mr. Hoy is somebody I respect a lot. I will not sit anywhere without evidence and attack his integrity. He's the last person I would do that to. So that's not what I'm doing. But I'm saying that is it not good for this country that in discussing this matter, which is an old issue,
all these
documentations and official records ought to be brought to the front burner so that we can have a more meaningful discourse. Is that not so? That's the point I'm making.
Okay. Sam, very quick response and let me take a break. I need to take a break right now. Very quick response.
But I was going to put it to him that the local government minister has had an interview with a TV station, ETV, the morning after you said, and he said that judgment, the current local government minister, he said judgment has already been, yes, that judgment has already been given. I've given the interview to your people. They can play it on this particular matter, on the 86.
In which court?
He said judgment has been given, and that tape is here.
Sammy would not be saying
but I'm telling you, that's what the local government minister, the tape is here. If they want, you can play it.
Okay, Sam, quick response, and take a break.
Maybe he was talking of something.
I don't know how many minutes
I'll give you just a minute. I have to take a break. You've had a very lengthy say and read a very lengthy
I was going
so
to quote.
I
was going to quote from Mr. John Slater, QC, who gives us the mindset that operated when the MPP
okay, you know what, let me take a break and then when I return...
That has nothing to do with this.
Let me take a break. When I return, tie up this matter. We need to tie up and deal with our final subject. There's going to be a press conference by the former local government minister later in the week to explain his side of it. Other people are on radio explaining their parts. What's the best way to get resolution or to bring resolution to this matter?
The best way.
I'm not sure press conferences will solve this.
It will help shed light because Mr. Bacon has demanded some documents, and I agree with him. The SFO report, the Auditor General's report. SFO, there was also a BNI report.
Okay,
yes, there was also a BNI report because Mr. Kwamina Hoy was hauled before the BNI several times. He was there not less than 40 times. There was a suspicion that there must be something fishy about this transaction, and that is what explains all of what happened. But I am saying that closure should have been brought to this matter. In the event that the company was not ready to cut its losses, wanted to still keep those vehicles in your domain to respect their to continue to stand by the contract. Who owns the Institute of...
No. Before it went there.
So who was in their custody?
Who was paying the
But don't forget you had collected 23 of
Before
the
the
110
NPP
vehicles.
administration.
So it was a running contract. You had to respect it. If you did not want to respect
charging
the
us warehouse
contract,
charges.
if you did not want to respect the contract anymore, you know what to do.
So
Go
Mr.
to court
Ahoy's press
and bring-
conference would do what? Bring some of these documents that Kweku is talking about, and
yes,
is that what government
yes.
is going to use as a firm foundation for its negotiation now? Do we believe that?
No,
that
no,
will-
we have all these documents in our possession. We believe that the previous administration did not exercise due diligence. They were not just, they were not fair. It was against the business climate and their own professed golden age of business, as lawyer Tachia states in his letter, and that this matter must be resolved immediately.
And you were in opposition, and you should have pointed it out to them.
Okay,
then.
it's 30 minutes.
Could you-
30
I'm
minutes.
surprised. So
I'm
he's cleaning
coming
up.
out of
We
the
were
house.
being subjected.
The people
we were being
have
subjected
that
to
we have
investigations.
the
He
government
is
has
suggesting that the government of Ghana
on
today
public-
holds this view and is proceeding to act
No,
on
no,
that.
but publicly,
Yes,
okay,
correct.
it's dangerous. But
Correct.
publicly,
That's
if
the point.
Sami
I'm
is
summarizing
telling,
it.
if
That's
Sami and the government is telling Africa Automobile Limited that government has a liability, we have considered that we
That's
have a
what we are
liability.
saying.
If I were them, I'll be running to court.
That's what
With
we
this
are
set of
saying.
statements.
They are already in court.
Oh,
They are
but
already in
I-
court.
But you
I-
have to accept that you
They
have a
are already
liability.
in
But
court.
something
It's
out of
dangerous.
curiosity,
Could you
it was a
please?
trade-in from the Mitsubishis.
Yeah,
So
Pajero,
if I understand trading, you sent the Mitsubishis back to them, and then they gave you the column or whatever. If that's a trade-in, so
Yeah,
you
they were
recalled
valid.
all those Mitsubishis, and you
Where are
gave
they?
them. No, I want to know because
We
you said it
recalled
was a
some,
trade.
23.
You recalled
23.
the 23
Yeah,
Mitsubishis.
the MPP did not
and
follow through.
you sent it back to them, and then still the thing was costing 17 million for
Quickly.
trading.
Quickly.
I mean, I want-
And they are
I
charging
want to know.
800%.
Quickly, some makes us understand that the government of
Jesus
Ghana holds
Christ.
the view that it was handled badly by the previous administration and needs
It
to.
was handled
Yes,
badly by
and
both
it
of them.
needs to be properly cleaned up
Let's-
now.
It was
Let-
handled
Yes.
badly by both
We
of them.
need to
Wrap up
find
for me.
out if indeed this particular case went to court, and if it did, when. Because it's also critical.
Why?
If it didn't go to court within 6 years, and it went after 6 years,
Statute of limitation.
yes, we need to find out which court, when, which judge, and what defense did the state put up. It's getting
It's,
murkier and
it's,
murkier.
it's very easy to find.
Kojo,
Very
the government spokespeople are giving conflicting information out there on this case. The local government minister is out there saying that judgment has been passed. Sami is saying that the people are yet in court. We are saying that it is absurd for anybody to charge the country 800% per annum. We're also saying that for the company to be charging us $154,000 per vehicle. Please.
It is
Some-
more,
and
it
then
is
you
more,
are
it is more
accepting
absurd
some.
for you to create conditions
Why
that
should
allow,
anybody accept
that
such a
allow
vehicle?
this to thrive.
Some-
You should have brought closure to this matter.
Okay, well said. But wouldn't you agree that looking at the various questions and analysis that are coming in, it may perhaps be important, among other things, for government to engage the various persons and let the nation know where we are on this matter, so that all the various angles that are being raised can be properly addressed.
Fair point. We'll do that.
30 minutes after 11. This is Newsfile. Let me read your text, and then we'll talk about the 46 new districts, am I right, that were created in this week, and the legal questions being raised. Kweku from Elmina says, I smell some gargantuan collusion with African Automobile. After all, the patronized Pajeros massively were from that company. Da Costa from Tema says a client would have every power to reject any product supplied which does not meet his or her request. Who is the minister working for? Government of Ghana or Africa Automobile? Everything points to the fact that the Mills administration have failed Ghanaians and do not deserve a second term. This one doesn't bear name. Says the president has no plans for Ghana. He's only in to better the lot of his close allies. If he's not going for the debate, he should give us a break. The MPP are noted for causing problems for this country. That is why they have caused so many judgment debts now. Decisions they take are irresponsible and scandalous. Emmanuel Arthur says, must we always pay these debts? People are suffering, yet we get money to pay such unnecessary money to people. We need jobs, schools, good roads and infrastructure. Ghanaians, we must change our attitude. Spike, listening in the USA, says, ask these visionless NDC politicians if the monies were coming from their pockets, would they be so keen to pay these huge sums of money? they have no feelings and regard for Ghanaians. That's why Ghanaians should boot them out in December. Also in Accra says, who protects Ghana from fraud? At the moment, it looks like we don't have anyone doing that job, and that people with some capacity to defraud the state are showing up with strange claims. Dan in Tamale says, there are so many weaknesses in our system, and people are just taking advantage of it. The politicians do not also care about the suffering masses, and they are helping these people to rob us. Doe from Cape Coast says, I would like to know from the Honourable Minister the amount of money the MPP paid as judgment debt as compared to what the NDC has paid so far. 34 after 11, 46 new district assemblies were formally inaugurated just a couple of days ago. Some persons were happy, others were displeased. But it appears there are still some legal questions. Are we in for a legal surprise, or is this just a bout of ugly noises and much ado about nothing? You are familiar with the various legal challenges and legal questions. Brief us quickly. Are we in for a legal surprise, or these are just ugly noises?
No, anybody who takes this to court will win. So for me, there are no surprises at all. But there are two legal positions that we should all analyze this issue. The first is Act 462, which states that no one individual person can belong to two district assemblies. That's the first thing we should take note. The second thing we should also take note is that's one of the reasons why EC says that if government creates a constituency, a district, they will create a constituency. They don't want a member of parliament to be serving two districts. The second reason is the constitution itself, 242, which says that the moment the EC creates a constituency, it takes effect after the dissolution of that current parliament. So if EC creates a constituency today, it will take effect on the 7th of January 2013 rather. The question is, as we sit today, government has created and integrated 46 districts. Embedded in these districts are 20 districts that have their constituency being divided. So as we sit today, there are 20 MPs who are currently sitting on two districts. That is against the Act itself and even the Constitution. So the question is, why would government do that? And why would government have a law and not respect it? There is nobody in this country who does not want a district. In fact, in my place, for example, I have a district and a constituency. I want it to be divided in as many times as possible, 5 districts, 10 districts. I will be very happy because it brings in development. But if you have a law that states that the MP cannot belong to two districts, and now we have one member of parliament belonging to two districts for 6 months, then what sort of law is that? In law, even if you break it for 1 day, it's equivalent to breaking the law. So if the MP for Weja, the MP for Zabzugu, the MP for Lauren Nandom, the MP for Doman West, the MP for Sene, now belongs to two districts. He is taking care of two districts. Okay? Their status will have to be questioned. And apart from that, that MP will have to begin to ask himself, I asked Weja MP, which is your district? She says, I have two districts. Lauren Nandon now has Nandon district and the Laura district. That clearly is illegal. That's the first legal challenge that we have to face. The second legal challenge, which I said, is the fact that Parliament is the body that makes allies in the forms of creating other constituencies or districts. Now, Parliament has limitations as well. Parliament cannot just do what it wants. Government brought, the EC brought, in 2010, brought some allies, Airline 1983, to Parliament. Now, when they brought it, what Parliament did was to amend these allies because there were so many petitions. Unfortunately for Parliament, the Supreme Court in two instances, the Akwese ruling and the Lejikuku ruling, has said that what Parliament did was illegal and null and void. And the Supreme Court has that right. No other court has that right to declare it like that. So I hold in my hand, for example, about so many districts. We have in Ashanti, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That has declared Airline 1983 illegal because of those demarcations or because of those amendments. For example, I'll give you one example. Isutufi it was one district. Now we have Isutufi South now being a district. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has declared that the airline that has been used to create that district is illegal because it was 47 electoral areas that came, and now we have 48 electoral areas. And the district was created based on the 48 electoral areas. The Supreme Court has declared that illegal. So what do you do with that kind of district? And there are so many of them. I can just give you so many of such places. Yulu Krobo, Kurapi North, you know, it has also Achimensa, Ashaman, Dangbe West, Lejukuku Krowa, Nanumba North, Solakaraba, Saboba, so many.
If somebody goes to court, you think we'll have a problem. But right now, we don't know of any particular cases.
I do know that
galvanized on this?
No, I do know that about 3 cases are already in court on this particular matter. Government was aware, for example, that the creation of those districts where somebody said they want to gerrymander, for example, had been in court, and that somebody said, look, let the Electoral Commission create the constituencies first. If you believe you want to give Zabzugu a new constituency, liaise with the Electoral Commission. If it qualifies to get the constituency, they will create the constituency. Then January, whichever government comes will turn into a district. But if you do the reverse, it becomes very, very, very problematic with the law. Otherwise, then we have to amend the act. The act forces to which says that no individual member of the assembly can belong to 2 assemblies. As long as that is not also amended, we'll have that problem. So there are about 4 cases in that, and we are waiting for the Supreme Court to rule, and then we're going to know whether we have what the courts will say. It's going to be murky, seriously very murky. It's the same thing with the Electoral Commission creating constituencies. It's the same thing with the district creating districts. But I think that it is the right of every government to create districts. And I think that it is the right of the people of Ghana to have as many districts as possible. In fact, if MPP has an opportunity, we will make every constituency a district. Okay, I don't have a problem with government creating districts. So after that one, government has a right, and government should go ahead and create as many districts as possible. But government should do that according to law. You don't have a law, and then you break it. That is the problem I have with the government. So today, on Tuesday, I'm going to raise that issue in Parliament on Tuesday, that we have 20 members of Parliament sitting in Parliament today who have to clarify their status as to whether legally they belong to 1 district or 2 districts. That answer must come. Otherwise, we have a big problem. Now, the allies that have also been ruled illegal, the amendments by Parliament, that is also another legal challenge that we have to face. And so we'll look at how government will handle that matter.
Mr. Baka.
Kojo, all of this on and on and on and on by the MPP and Dominic Notiwell, it's about one thing. When you create districts in consultation with the Electoral Commission, it leads to constituencies. As he has said, there are at least 20 of these districts that automatically constituencies will be created. All the MPP's fears is just one thing. It's a simple matter. They have looked at the number of constituencies that the Electoral Commission is about to announce, and they fear that the NDC will take majority. That is all. That is all this matter is about. That is all. That is all.
So is that the reason you did the gerrymandering?
All this on and on about ally and constituency. And let's cut the chase, Dominic. Let's cut the chase.
No, is that the reason you did the gerrymandering?
You are my brother. Cut the chase. I mean, all this that if you go to Supreme Court, you will win, and you are raising it on Tuesday.
Are there legal questions there?
We have been creating districts. It's not new. This is not the first time we are creating districts. It's not the first time the Electoral Commission is going to announce constituencies. It was done under the MPP administration. These same processes and consultations were followed. It has been done in consultation with the Electoral Commission. These institutions, the Electoral Commission, the Ministry of Local Government, and Cabinet do not see any constitutional breaches. It is not as if the districts that have been created, that is the end of the matter. And so we have violated the constitutional clause by insisting that those MPs, those 20 MPs, who, as the Constitution says, you cannot have 2 districts in 1 constituency, are going to remain like that. This is a process that you can say is not ended, because the Electoral Commission has announced that 45 new constituencies will be created. And in that announcement, it will cure this mischief. It was done in consultation with the Electoral Commission. So to raise all these issues, just because you have looked at the number of constituencies and you are clear in your mind that because of the potency of the NDC, because of the impeccable achievements of Professor Mills, the NDC would win in most of those constituencies. So you are afraid of your own shadows. The point that has to be made, Dominic, is that you have to be very, very careful with what you are doing. I am wondering whether anybody is advising you going to raise this matter in Parliament and all the press conferences you are holding. I've heard Professor Michael Quay of the implications of what you are doing. Majority of the people on the ground are so excited about these new districts. Indeed, most of the agitation about the few areas where there are problems is that they also wanted a district, or they wanted district capital. And you are standing against the tide, standing against the popular will of the people. I don't know if the MPP appreciates the disaster, the consequence of what you are doing, so far as your electoral fortunes are concerned. And one would have thought that you would have joined in the consultative processes which are ongoing and ensure that the right thing is done. That is what we did when we were in opposition and you were creating districts and creating constituencies. We joined in the processes. We did not engage in all these loud noises and press conferences and threats because we knew of the consequences. The records show on the ground that anytime you have more districts, or you break districts into two, or you create more districts, development is expedited because they now control their own common fund, they have their own leaders who can focus on a smaller land side. So the overwhelming majority of our people are excited about these new districts. They want these districts. And you should not be seen to be acting against the interests, the aspirations, the wishes, and the hopes of our people.
But Kojo, is anybody saying this government should not create districts?
The argument has been about the legal questions and like.
But did anybody say government should not create
That's what you are
questions
saying. That's
really,
what you are saying. You want to eat your cake and have
don't
it.
hold. He holds the view that the legal questions don't hold. Susan, let me hear
but
you.
I want to ask a question. Should we be creating more districts? Because I was reading the law and it says what? The district should be created economic with criteria. One criteria being economic viability. That economic viability means that the ability of the area to provide the basic infrastructure and other development needs for monetary and other resources generated in the area.
Let me help you with the text that's just coming in. The MPP created districts without structures to house them. The NDC condemned it at the time, but they've just done exactly the same. Builsa South is a typical example. There's no single office as a symbol even of the district assembly.
Thank you very much. The NPP created 60 districts. Let's ask ourselves, those 60 districts that were created, what development has gone there? The fact that you create districts does not necessarily translate into development. You know, I mean,
it helps.
It does not.
It's a major contributory factor.
It is these things that you say that contribute to the ethnic strife that is going on and all those conflicts among people that hey, the district must come here and we want the district, etc., etc. You know, look, the district. I mean, the law does not state a ceiling to the district. So everybody comes and wants to create districts, and because of political advantage, like you are arguing among yourselves, because it will give us more this, it will give us job for the boys, we'll put more DCs out there, and then the
for the girls too.
Yes.
Boys and girls.
Boys and girls. You know. So, you know, this
politics.
At a certain point in our life, there must be a ceiling. We must take stock and say, look, are these districts, we created 60 in the 8 years of the MPP. Those 60, let us take an evaluation of them. Has development actually come to the people? You know, are the people getting the kind of rewards that supposedly a district gives them? Are they economically viable? Because the district itself on its own should be able to be economically viable. It should not be from toilet tolls or market tolls. What, as a district, are the resources there that the district is getting for itself that can sustain itself? You know, so we should be looking not just at the legality of it, but do we actually need to be creating districts? Another thing that we're looking at, I said development, is I wanted to read something that the Honorable Ofosu said. He urged municipal and district assemblies, from which the new ones were carved, to assist in the transition period of releasing some assets to the new ones. We are sharing the same national cake. You know, when it was one district, they had 10 pieces of cake to share. Now they divide it into two and they say, oh, then share it 5-5. Then what was the point?
No, we have set aside special funds.
Well, that's not what he's saying.
46
I am
million.
quoting what he said. It is here, it is everywhere. He said, share what you have. So it is the same amount of national cake that we are going to share. It doesn't make any sense. You get me? What we do is to increase the bureaucratic purse or increased cost of governance, because then you put a DC in, then he wants his own galloper. Then, yes, you put a DC in, he wants his own galloper. Then he wants his own office and his own...
now they use Everest.
Everest. But today they are using Nizam patrols.
Make your point, Susan.
No, and you just increase the cost of governance, and the people actually do not get the development they deserve. If we want development into the people, it is not the number. You should have a DC who is accountable to the people, a DC who is elected by the people. Like you should have done, because you said it long time ago, not now.
We've done it in the white paper.
White paper is on paper now. Let's see. We live
Don't
to
get
see whether.
Don't get distracted. Make your point.
We live to see whether you will be elected again to be able to do whatever you said. It won't happen.
You know we will.
No,
and
but
after us, the CPP will come.
Make your point, Susan. Don't let him distract you.
The issue is, development should actually be when the people can hold the DCE to account. Okay, the DCE will say that, look, we collect, these are the resources of our districts, and then this is how we have distributed the resources of our district, and this is how, and then when come 4 years, you can vote for me based on whether our district has improved or not. All politics should be local. I was looking at the Americans and how they do their counties. You know what? They have not created new counties since 1912. They have counties that are as big as having a population of 9 million. They have counties that are as small as having a population of 85. They have not created new counties, and yet the people know that they can hold their county commissioners accountable. They can ask for zoning, and they know, houses are not supposed to be here, etc.
I don't pretend to have read everything in the Constitutional Review Commission white paper and then the report, but I haven't heard so far anybody suggest that this thing about creation of districts and constituencies has been cured even with the amendment.
It has not been cured.
With your prescriptions, do you think there's a way by which we can cure it legally? Else, people will have to comply with what the law say and interpret it in their own ways and still,
maybe we need to look at it. There ought to be a ceiling at a certain point.
Yeah.
We cannot go on the way we are going. Somebody comes with 60, somebody comes with 46, then somebody else will come and say, I want to create 80 something so that I can give more jobs to people. There must be a ceiling. There must be a cutoff point. We need to evaluate. Have these creation of districts actually brought the returns that we think they should have? And then based on that evaluation, say that there ought to be a cutoff point. Economic viability. You need to grow that economy, that district economy, to a particular level so that the development will get to people. It has to go into the constitution.
There's a little cure in that particular thing. They are proposing that MPs should not be automatic members of the DC Assembly. They can be co-opted, but they shouldn't be automatic. I read it yesterday.
What does that do exactly?
What it does that it does no more force the Electoral Commission to follow at forces to and say that once a government creates a district, you should create a constituency.
Mr. Bako?
I'll be honest with you. I don't have too much information and education on this matter. I would decline to comment.
Okay.
I want to study the subject matter.
And respond appropriately. We've got about 8 minutes to quickly get out on the studio. So I'm going to give my guest a very quick opportunity to comment on something that's just simmering over the last 2-3 days before I read the final batch of text. It's the NDC party chairman, Dr. Kwabena J, who now says he's going to go to court to clear his name in a new saga that's brewing. A tape has emerged purporting to have his voice on it, in which the voice says, among other things, that the persons behind the rumors of the president's health and even rumors of his demise are within the party and should be dealt with. He's not taking kindly to the airing of that tape on a number of platforms. Question, is that something that should be interrogated? Mr. Kofi Adams, for instance, says it should be interrogated and the same fate of suspension perhaps meted out to him. Or there's just one bogus idea that should be thrown out of the window. Sam, a quick comment on that one.
It's an interesting matter brewing. I have heard the national chairman say that that is not his voice and that there's been some doctrine going on with the production of that tape. I have also heard Mr. Kofi Adams say that what is good for the goose should be good for the gander. Except that my point of departure with Kofi Adams has to do with the content of both tapes. One tape was actively against the fortunes of the party, that look, let's do everything to make sure that the NDC government becomes a one-term government. in the tape where Kofi Adams was allegedly speaking with Mr. Gabi Ochidaku. In this tape, the national chairman is talking about the health of the president. I don't think that in terms of degree, it is the same. You can't put. I'm talking on the health of the party. The health of the president. I don't see how that. Even if both tapes were accurate, both tapes were true, I don't see how you can put it at the same level. One is against the fortunes of the NDC. The other really is joining all these gossip. That is.
So you think it should be disregarded?
But I think the chairman should even have disregarded this tape. I don't think that the content are of any value, and really, it will also depend on how the National Executive Committee of the party tries to deal with this matter. In the final analysis, I think that what is clear is that the president is strong, he's able to do his job. He does not face any limitations. He has not been needed anywhere that he has not been to. He's not been needed to sign any document, to make any speech that he has not been able to. He's not incapacitated. And I think that's what...
Well, do you have any comments or information on this one?
Not exactly. I was searching for my a copy of my NDC constitution and find out whether, assuming without admitting, that's the voice of the chairman who is accusing the party elders, top echelons of the party, has been behind this whole matter about the president's health, would not constitute anti-party conduct, or misconduct under the constitution. I was looking for a copy, but unfortunately I couldn't locate it. So if within the context, it may not be the same as Kofi Adams, but if it's captured, it's defined as anti-party conduct, then why not? Disciplinary measures ought to be taken, or the disciplinary procedure ought to be activated, and the culprit or the target dealt with according to their party constitution. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Susan, comment.
Well, my big brother has taken the wind out of my sail, because based on what I am hearing, if he says the people who are spreading these rumors are within the party, for me it's not a big deal. I don't see how somebody can be hauled in front of a disciplinary committee because he thinks that Abobi Beka or Frauntuma. Isn't that what Wale said?
Right. It was too categorical. The top echelons of the party are behind it.
Well,
that's a serious statement to make. No, but a serious statement to make when especially the party itself is claiming that others are doing it, that the MPP is behind it, and then you suddenly come in and say, no, this is from within. It has its own implications for party solidarity, party discipline, and everything coming from a party chairman.
But maybe you must cure it from within. You cannot cure it from without.
No, but I'm saying they should look at it.
Was it a public statement, or it was a secret? It was a private statement that was
voice
recorded?
or it's not his voice?
The effect is that the tape is now out there.
Yes, and it is his voice.
But maybe it was a private conversation.
It sounds like his voice.
Maybe it was a private conversation.
He's going to court.
So
no, it sounds like his voice. Now he's talking about didn't grant interview. Who said it's a necessary interview? You may have been talking. Yes, Kofi Adams said he didn't grant interview.
So
it's the law of karma.
The thing is that looking at their constitution, they must deal with it fairly. But
this is the law of karma.
Going to court.
The thing is, the troubles in the NDC, they seem to be escalating, and probably reach a peak at a particular time, which will be beneficial to
the CPP.
Thank you very much.
I think the NDC and Asir Nkate in particular should be apologizing to the MPP, because when this matter came up, I heard him on your station out there saying that it was the MPP. The first group or the first person within the NDC to come out and say that it was from the castle itself was the informal newspaper. From the informal newspaper, now a tape is coming that the chairman of the party itself is saying, no, it's from within us. So for me, MPP has been vindicated. We have said that we have no benefit if the president is not there today. The biggest beneficiary of if the president, unfortunately, is not there today, which I know won't happen, is the NDC and people within the NDC. So they should go out there and come apologize to the MPP and stop blaming anybody. But if the party took a decision to suspend Kofi Adams without investigating whether it was his voice,
you think they should do the same?
They should do the same.
We are out of time. Let me give you my final take on the various conversations we have had. On the IEA matter, it was a delight to watch once again a presidential candidate stand up and be interrogated by a cross-section of interest groups on the weight of his ideas. It will help our democracy if we deepen it and get all candidates to participate. It's a shame it's not going to happen this year, 2012, but let's open up, let's engage some more, and let's deepen our democracy. It will help. On the gallopers, we need full disclosure and full engagement of the various persons on this subject. Government must not be too quick to settle, but it has to, if government has to settle, it should carry the people along and let the people know with full disclosure. And talking about districts, we seem to be getting to a point where we need to evaluate whether indeed this claim is true, that creating districts speeds up development. And if we want to get to a point where we don't create 3,000 districts in Ghana, the answer sounds like a legal remedy sometime soon. Let's find that remedy.